Well, I'm waiting on the call to be picked up. So, you know, in the meantime, play more Diablo? No, I've heard many people in chat describe the Diablo games as the darkest period of the game streams. We're not going to do that. I think I should turn it down even lower. Yeah, I'll turn it down even lower. Okay, we're just waiting for the call to be picked up. Nothing that happens from this point forward is my fault. Isaac streams were the good days? Those were a long time ago. Hello?
Hey, what's going on?
Howdy! How you doing?
Howdy indeed. How are you?
Doing wonderfully. Nice and pleasantly cold over here in Seattle. How's your day going?
Pretty good. New York started to be cold as well. We had some insanely warm weather until maybe last week.
Nice. Well, hopefully not unpleasantly cold. So what, introduce yourself to the fine people watching. What did you want to talk about?
Hello, fine people. I was on your stream, I think, 2 years ago, and we were talking about how I'm a libertarian or left libertarian, meaning that I question many of the things that, you know, people normally accept with the concentrations of power, governments, corporations, and so on. And nothing gets me more libertarian than war. Obviously, conscripting men to fight each other, you know, dropping bombs on civilians, all these things are things that could be avoided if the politicians actually did their job correctly. But unfortunately, those people never get, their incentives are not aligned. They don't go to the war, their families don't go to the war, but they send all these young men, and people and babies blow up, and it's just awful. So I just wanted to kind of get talk about it from a libertarian perspective and kind of see what alternatives we could have had, what we can have, and so on. For what it's worth, we can't do anything about it, but it would be nice to have a different perspective, perhaps.
Yeah, well, I fully agree that war is bad. So what has that belief led you to vis-a-vis Ukraine?
With Ukraine, it's a unique situation. And it's not just me saying it. There's many correspondents to say it. I've spoken to Noam Chomsky and others. I think that there's a lot of rhetoric that justifies continuing the war. I've seen similar things with Afghanistan. I mean, not personally, but going through history, you can see Afghanistan was very successfully used to create a quagmire for, at the time, the Soviets, the USSR, at the cost of 1 million Afghan civilians. And so the war went on for years, and then eventually the Soviet Union withdrew, and it was considered a success. I think Hillary Clinton said it was worth it, you know, even though the people we supported over there later turned out to use that money to attack us, and not just us. I mean, other people matter around the world, not just us. But the thing is that all of that could have been avoided too. And I think countries need to work together in order to prevent these things from happening, rather than prolong them, exacerbate them, you know, just because of principles or whatever.
Sure, well, there's not much to be done to prevent this, right? Obviously, if we could go back in time and prevent Putin from invading Ukraine, that would be preferable, but given the situation we've been handed, it seems like the best possible outcome we can hope for is Ukraine maintaining its territorial sovereignty and supplying it the arms that allow it to do so.
Well, I agree. That would be the best outcome. The thing is that there's no plan B. And look, I mean, the U.S. has changed its rhetoric. I think it was after the election or whatever. They're now pushing Ukraine to, or they're gently nudging Ukraine to the negotiating table, finally. You know, how much of it is tied up with U.S. politics or, I don't know, political agendas. But what I'm basically saying is, A, it could have been avoided. The 2014 revolution could have been avoided. The U.S. played a direct role in almost like encouraging or fomenting the revolution in the first place in a democratic country. You know, in fact, if Ukraine was democratic, there was no need for a revolution. Just like in the United States having January 6th, there's no need. If you have democracy, why would you have a revolution? But
what you saw in Euromaidan was their democracy. The people of Ukraine weren't happy with Yanukovych's rule. there was authentically like a great deal of unrest and unpopularity. Yanukovych was a puppet of Putin, and after his departure, which left behind, sort of the empty apparatus of his Russian control, we saw a more authentic return to Ukrainian democracy. And a process during which Russia has continued to manufacture aggression with Ukraine. I don't think Ukraine could have done anything to prevent this from happening. Certainly not the United States.
Oh, I don't place the blame on Ukraine, or certainly not Ukrainian civilians. By the way, to me, people are separate from a country. If Catalonia decides to secede from Spain, that's Spain may arrest the leaders, and they did, or if the Kurdish referendum to secede from Iraq, and those guys were also never able to do that. So countries and people, to me, are different things as a libertarian. But I will say, of course, Ukraine is not to blame here. What I'm basically saying is every country has people with different views, strongly held views, especially in the wake of an empire falling, like the Ottoman Empire or the USSR, or whatever. And so what happens is, if you take advantage of those differences, like Shiites versus Sunnis, okay, like in Yemen with Iran, you create a proxy war. What you do is Iran comes in and gives hope to the Houthi rebels and says, okay, Houthi rebels, it's your country. You can take this over. The Shiites, can rise again. And then the Saudi coalition says, there's a revolution we didn't like. Now we're losing power. So we support the aggressor in a way. And of course, the concept of who is an aggressor is very interesting, because there's a proxy war with essentially, of course, Ukraine is just caught in the middle of this. But to say the U.S. did nothing, I mean, the U.S. did more than Iran did in Yemen.
I don't think Ukraine is in the middle. It's one of the two combatants in a war between two nations.
No. What I'm saying is that territory, which is Ukraine since 1991, was between empires for hundreds of years. It was part of Poland. It was part of Russia. It was part of the Habsburg Empire, Austro-Hungarian, and so on. So there's always some sort of meddling in the politics, but more importantly is domination. So yes, of course, Russia is, it's an imperialist country, but so is the U.S. And I'm saying if these countries had stayed up, of course, we're not invading. Well, we did invade many other countries. We've invaded way more countries than Russia did.
Yeah, but we're not talking about those countries. If we were, then I would have a different stance. In this instance, we're not the aggressors. And it's not a proxy war.
In this instance, yeah.
The people of Ukraine authentically want to defend themselves against Russia. In a proxy war, another nation is just being used as a puppet in another country's machinations. Regardless of what America wants here, Ukraine wants to defend itself. Our involvement is purely to Ukraine's benefit, but we do not manufacture their consent. Ukraine wants to defend itself.
I just want to be clear. When you say Ukraine wants, or Ukraine wants to defend itself, people do not necessarily want to be conscripted. Regular people.
The people of Ukraine want to defend themselves.
No. Here's what I'm trying to say. That yes, today, when you get it to the point where they have to defend themselves against an invasion, and even then, there are many people who may say, look, we got to stop this. And these people, I've seen screenshots. So I've personally talked to the peace negotiators of Ukraine.
With respect, no.
Yeah.
By every metric we can see, the people of Ukraine have an incredibly high morale for self-defense. The will of the Ukrainian people, insofar as such a thing can be extrapolated, is to defend themselves. Much as it was for France when they were invaded, Poland when they were invaded, and so on. It's a fairly unambiguous situation from their perspective. Obviously, not every single citizen in Ukraine wants to fight, of course, but that's the nature of war.
But that's an understatement, that not every citizen. My point is simply this. You can push things to the point where people choose to fight where previously they didn't. Okay? There's a guy who grows up in Gaza, doesn't want to fight. Regular people don't want to fight. Then his brother gets bombed or killed or whatever. Or he needs to defend, his territory. And I say this as, a Jewish person and someone who supports Israel. I understand if people get radicalized and angered by events and are pushed to the brink. I'm saying that didn't need to happen. Yes, today, many people would like to fight, and many people are angry about Bucha. Many people are angry about war crimes. But there was a peace negotiation going on, and what I'm saying is that thing completely died around April, and that's a huge tragedy.
That is because Russia will not leave. They need to leave.
Just because, okay, so this is the other thing I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say there has to be a plan B. If I've seen this with Afghanistan, I've seen this same rhetoric with other countries. You know, if this absolute victory doesn't happen, there's no plan B. We're going to keep going, and it's not us fighting. It's like Schiff said, they fight Russia over there, so we don't have to fight them over here. In other words,
that's not true. The plan B is if they're unable to reacquire their territory, then they'll sue for peace while allowing Russia to maintain the territory that it acquired. But obviously, as long as Ukraine feels they can keep taking more territory back, they will. Why wouldn't they? They were invaded.
Like I said, I would be very glad if Ukraine could take back all its territory, drive the Russians out, and then there would be peace, right? What I'm trying to say to you is, first of all, 100,000 men died on each side. And I say men because that's mostly who gets conscripted. They cannot leave. These countries don't let them leave. So the difference between our perspectives is that you talk in terms of like Ukraine wants, Russia wants. These are not people. Countries are things that, you know, exist for 100 years, 50 years, whatever. The people, the human beings, their lives should matter more than which flag is, you know, over Crimea. You shouldn't have to kill 100,000 people over that.
Perhaps Russia shouldn't have invaded the people who led to those deaths.
Yeah, but I have a problem with the blame game. So if 1 million Afghans die, and then we say, well, perhaps the USSR should not have come and helped the revolutionary government in Afghanistan. Yeah, perhaps that is true. But we're not children. We know what it takes to achieve peace, and our politicians can do it. In this case, many people, from the Pope to Tulsi Gabbard to Tucker Carlson to Noam Chomsky,
Tulsi Gabbard and Tucker Carlson, people whose opinions I often defer to in matters of geopolitics.
Well, I also would like to say the Pope is a lefty, Noam Chomsky is a lefty.
The Pope
I'm a
is
lefty.
the Pope, and Noam Chomsky is wrong on this. No.
What do you think he's saying?
Noam Chomsky. I've talked with Noam Chomsky, or I've talked about Noam Chomsky in videos where I talk about Noam Chomsky. I'm talking with you right now, and the problem is right now, like, you should be playing the blame game because one side is to blame. This isn't World War I. This isn't some complex network of treaties that ended up unraveling in a, you know, unfortunate and mutually blamable conflict. Russia just invaded Ukraine in a process of ethnic replacement and extermination, as so admitted not only by their leaders but by their state media officials. The people of Ukraine overwhelmingly support Zelensky, who has been quite hawkish in his defense against Russia. Insofar as a democratic society can be said to agree on something, you'll never get everyone to, but you can get most people to. Something like 90% of Ukrainians, more Ukrainians than you would ever get to agree on any other subject, are in favor of the continued defense against Russia. And I don't see any reason why we should not support this, considering the fact that they are the aggrieved party in this instance.
It's not that we shouldn't support this, is that we should have the entire time allowed, for example, France and Germany create a peace agreement, which existed, an internationally negotiated peace agreement from 2014. They met multiple times. Poroshenko met with Putin.
You mean the one Russia kept breaking?
Both sides kept, let's put it this way, did not implement a very simple agreement. This agreement was stop fighting, get a demilitarized zone.
The agreement involved the withdrawal of Russian troops from the Donbass region, which they never did. The whole treaty was a non-starter without.
But I'm not saying Russia is somehow an angel or blameless.
No, it's not that they're not an angel. It's that the Minsk Accords could never have worked because Russia never cared about them. They were a bait to waste time. They were you know, we may be the aggressors here, but how about you listen to us? We have a treaty, we have a solution, but they never listened or cared.
Well, I strongly disagree. I think
it doesn't matter if you disagree. This is factually correct. They never abided by even the initial protocols of the agreement.
Well, the initial protocols required both sides to withdraw troops. And it was like children. It's like, no, you go first. No, you go first.
No, Ukraine didn't have troops in the Donbass. The Minsk Accords had the Donbass region as the neutral territory, which was, by the way, Ukrainian land that Russia invaded.
Yes, it is Ukraine, and it would have, until the invasion in 2022, it would have remained completely under sovereign Ukrainian control. And all the borders, part of the Minsk agreement is that Ukraine would go back to controlling all of its borders, and it would be Ukrainian land. In
Russia
fact,
never withdrew troops. Russia never withdrew their troops from that region. They never even began to abide by
Yes.
the Minsk Accords.
No, it's not that they didn't. Everyone began. If you look at Wikipedia and you look at what happened since 2015, you don't have to ask me. Go on Wikipedia and look at the history of the Minsk Accords. What I'm telling you is not only the Minsk Accords, but Minsk is in Belarus, but Belarus wasn't the only country trying to broker the peace. Okay. What happened was also, by the way, Belarus supported the new government in Ukraine after the Euromaidan. Okay. With Lukashenko going, they did not agree with Putin and Russia. What I'm saying is that Belarus wanted peace, but so did France and Germany. Merkel, and at that time Macron, and I think before Macron, they were always getting Putin together with the Ukrainian president, Poroshenko, for example. It was called the Normandy format, and you can Google it. Normandy format happened many times, not just in Minsk. It happened in Paris. It also happened in Normandy. That's what it's named after.
But this is a non-starter. Twice.
This is politicians trying to make an agreement.
Russia never tried to make an agreement. They were just wasting time, which they succeeded in doing.
This is where I disagree, because what I'm trying to tell you is, and this is what Noam Chomsky is also saying, since 2014. Well, let me say what he's saying. We as the United States can do something about what our country does. Okay. Our country, since 2013, John McCain went over there to Ukraine, had these massive crowds. He was telling them, why do you need Russia? Go be with Europe, be with us. We want you, right? And it's a very interesting thing for a country that supposedly doesn't like meddling in elections or whatever. So they've meddled in Russia's election with Boris Yeltsin.
How is it election meddling for an allied nation to say, hey, you should be allies with us?
How is it election meddling
is that
for a
not
nation?
Allowed? Like, we can't say, hey, we are your allies?
Okay, so when we tell a country, when we go into a sovereign country, and we tell one of the groups, let's say we go into Yemen, and we tell the group of Houthi rebels, hey, go be with the Shiite world. Don't worry, stop with the Sunnis. We're better for you.
Ukraine wasn't experiencing a revolution. It was a democratic country and an ally of ours after Euromaidan, clearly. And then we spoke to the democratic government of Ukraine. It wasn't like there was an active...
we spoke to the protesters.
The protesters.
We literally, it's like if someone came to January 6th and told the January 6th protesters, we're with you. Go ahead. You should go with the Republicans. Like literally, if the
socialist, you're very antagonistic to the idea of like the people rising up to depose an unpopular leader.
Yes, I am.
After Yanukovych was removed, democratic elections resumed, and the people chose unambiguously pro-EU candidates.
Well, let me ask you then.
The people of Ukraine have made their choice, and we speak to those people. That's why they stand with us now.
No, see, this whole thing about the people making their choice, when people are pushed into having to make a choice, you could also say that the anti-Maidan protesters made their choice.
With respect, I don't even want to respect this divulgence. By every metric we can determine the will of the Ukrainian people, they believe more in what I say they believe than they do in you by
I'm not talking about right now.
By an exponential degree. We're talking 10 to 1. There are more Ukrainians who agree with what I say they agree on than there are Americans who like pie. This is not something I'm interested in discussing. It was a democratic country which has had...
You support violence. I
support defensive violence, absolutely. Of course I do.
No, not defensive. You just said you support when people rise up against a kleptocrat or whatever.
You call yourself a socialist?
Can I recommend an alternative in a democratic country? Ukraine was a democratic country. In a democratic country like this country, you wait until the next election, and then you vote the other guy out.
You shouldn't be allowed to protest?
You shouldn't be allowed to topple your government, no.
He fled.
Yeah, because not just he, the parliament building was January 6th times 10. They went into the parliament building, they burned things, they came in with guns, they took over the thing. Yes, he fled.
You mean after Yanukovych's government started shooting peaceful protesters? No, violence against the protesters took place well before that point. And under Putin's recommendation, Yanukovych started having the protesters shot. They started killing peaceful protesters. And what were they protesting? They were protesting Yanukovych acting against the will of the Ukrainian people by siding with Russia over EU participation that was more favorable with the voters. If you oppose this, then perhaps you are an autocrat. This is fine. It's your problem. But as a
It's not
socialist
no.
and a
I'm for peace.
libertarian, I'm
I am for
uncomfortable.
stability.
You're socialist libertarian. I'm for stability. Don't protest your government. Come on.
Yeah, because I am. You know what a revolutionary socialist is, and versus like a socialist who wants to bring about socialism gradually through the democratic system. Do you understand the difference?
I understand that you're neither group, so it doesn't really matter what
Yeah,
the
I'm a
distinction is.
libertarian, which means I prefer smaller organizations, co-ops, credit unions,
And apparently
things
obeying
that
the
people
state.
voluntarily join, communes, yeah, families, sure. But I don't subscribe to your notion that, well, if 51% of people voted or 20% of people turned out and 11% voted, that's the majority, we now can conscript all the men and go make them fight. 100,000 people died on both sides. For what?
Maybe Russia shouldn't have invaded. That's crazy.
That's the blame game. Maybe.
No, you can't. Wait, hold. No. Stop. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not the blame game. They invaded. I don't know what kind of juvenile.
It's literally.
No. Wait, stop. Okay, it's not
Sure.
the blame game. It's causality. It's in our universe, when you do things happen? Yes. Okay. Well, Russia invaded. So, like, that's not the blame game. Like, yes, they're responsible. By your logic, like, what should all nations invaded, like, just accede, just surrender to the invading nation? Should Poland and France?
Do you want me to answer that? Yeah.
I'm almost
so what
afraid
you're
of what you'll
saying
say.
is,
But
well, first of all, what you're saying is literally he started it.
Yeah,
Like
yes.
literally, it's
no. You are fully correct. I am literally saying yes. Russia invaded Ukraine. Not the same as Ukraine invading Russia. Yes,
I
those are two
understand,
different
but
things.
adults realize that there are slightly more complex. Hold on, let me just say one thing. There's slightly more complex conflict resolution strategies in the world than blaming. Oh, he started it, therefore, we could just kill a lot of people now. No,
I
the
see.
thing
Well,
is,
Germany invaded France, but really, what's the difference between that and France invading Germany? When you think about it that way,
all these. Okay, so let's take that example. Let's take let's go.
This is
quickly.
Can I get into one
the
debate
Hitler
on the
example.
Ukraine
It's always,
war that doesn't end up in some kind of like metaphysical?
No, let's do
rejection of
Godwin's law.
empiricism?
Let's go directly to Hitler.
Wait, stop, please.
Yeah.
This is my issue. I keep wanting to have a discussion on like the particulars of the Ukraine situation.
I want to have what you want to have discussion.
Every time I get into a convo with somebody who like rejects empiricism as a concept, like you have to be so crazy to take a different position than what I have on this issue that it's like, okay, well, let's talk. Are there any differences between not doing things and doing things? Well, maybe there isn't actually. And it's like, well, what are we talking about? Like, sure, fine,
Of
France
course,
and Germany.
there is a difference, but that's not the only relevant difference. Right? There are other things involved, like preventing a war, like getting to a table and they could have had a Zoom discussion. Putin and Biden, Putin and Zelensky.
If only they had had a Zoom discussion, Putin would have not invaded.
Well, actually, yes, because so we're gonna speak in like 2-second sound bites. I'm gonna listen to what you're saying.
This is very silly.
No, it's not. What's silly is saying he started it, therefore I win.
Yeah, I do think that when you're the country that invades the other country for no reason, that is like kind of a mark against it.
It's not true. Your premise is wrong. It wasn't for no reason. Look, a lot of people would be way more sympathetic if the Ukrainians weren't using cluster bombs and killing people in the Donbass since 2014.
Yes, you mean when Russia invaded in 2014 and Ukraine defended its territory?
Are you just going to keep saying Russia invaded as like the answer to anything I say?
I actually am. I will keep rebuking your points by reminding you that yes, Russia did do the thing we're talking about.
So let's go chronologically to the time when Russia Russia invaded.
Stop. We do this Donbass cycle every time I talk with somebody. I thought we were talking about the war, but it's always like we have to do the anti-empiricism bit going all the way back.
No, you're the one who's
to the
going back in time and assigning blame who did it first. So
wait,
No,
I'm not. You're the one who brought up Euromaidan. I didn't go back in time. I want to talk about the war.
Yeah, but the war is a continuation of the previous proxy war.
No, of the war that Russia did.
The current invasion is a reaction to Ukraine using Bayraktar drones in 2021 and started winning, and the Bayraktar drones are coming from a NATO nation, which is Turkey.
So the current invasion by Russia is because Russia got mad that their previous invasion wasn't working out?
Wait, so are you talking about the previous invasion or not talking about
You keep bringing it up.
Dude, everything is a reaction to a previous thing.
Well,
okay, no one is doing things for no reason.
Seems to be Russia invading. That's like funny. However far back you go, it's like, oh, what did this? Oh, Russia did this.
Okay,
but that's
let me try a different approach here. Okay, let's talk about right now. Okay, So there's a public that supports a war, like in the Iraq War. If you look at statistics,
defending themselves, sure.
No, I'm talking about the Russian public supporting the invasion, right? I'm talking about the aggressor country, let's say US invading Iraq or Russia invading Ukraine. The Russian public, the majority, according to polls, independent polls, supports the war still.
Are you willing to concede that Russia's the aggressor country? I'm surprised you're willing to give me that, but yeah, I'll take it.
It's not, but I have never, I'm trying to tell you, yes, Russia invaded Ukraine. Ukraine didn't invade Russia. I mean, that's obvious.
Oh, yeah, but I was starting to be gaslit by this conversation into believing there wasn't a meaningful difference. But no, okay, I'll take that. Yes, I do think that Russia started it, yes.
What I'm saying is Russia invaded Ukraine. I'm using precise language here. Yes, Russia invaded Ukraine with its troops. Ukraine did not invade Russia. This is obvious. But what I'm saying to you is a proxy war, if you look on Wikipedia, is not just about using a country or whatever. It's about this. A country has multiple viewpoints. People in the west of Ukraine remember bad things that Stalin did and don't like Russia, and that's fine. And I can understand them, and I can understand why they have statues to someone like Stepan Bandera. On the other hand, people in the east of Ukraine, actually, some of them longed for the Soviet Union, and there's also a divide between the old and the young. People who grew up after 1991 are more nationalistic. What I'm trying to tell you is that it doesn't have to be like this, because normally, if there is a federal union like the EU or like the USSR, like USA, if within that union, if something happens, if this exact thing happened, Crimea went from being a Russian territory to being a Ukrainian territory, 1954. No one killed anyone over it. It was an administrative change. Nobody cared.
Wait, hold on. Yeah. Wait, really quickly. So that was an annex from Russia that they used military force to accomplish, and the only reason Ukraine didn't fight it is because at the time they had basically no domestic military.
One
of the reasons groups like the Azov Battalion rose to prominence was because they were part of the hyper-nationalist militia groups that eventually got folded into the National Defense Corps, because at the time Ukraine had like nothing with which to defend themselves against Russia.
By the way, I want to say this, you totally misunderstood me. I'm saying, maybe you don't know this, but Crimea used to belong to Russia until 1954. Russia meaning the Russian SSR, the Soviet Socialist Republic of Russia, okay? And then it got moved over by the feds. It got assigned to the Ukrainian Socialist Republic. No one in either republic really cared to kill people over this back then. And the difference was because they lived in a federal union where they realized that there are more important things to do than which flag will fly over Crimea. Today, because in 1991 the union fell apart, it's like now people who grew up after 1991 have a nationalist feeling. They want their own country. They're proud of it. And now the same exact event. That's why I'm a libertarian. I'm questioning why do you have to kill people over these things?
Do you see how there might be a difference between a territory in the USSR having its allegiances reshuffled slightly within its own broader coalition, and Russia using military force to just outwardly annex Crimea? Like, those are two very different things.
Do you understand that everyone has military force in a region? Ukraine has military force in Crimea when Crimea is part of Ukraine.
Ukraine hasn't used it to annex any Russian territory.
It doesn't need to, because, wow, look, when Catalonia wants to secede from Spain, which it did, and then Spain used its military force or its police force to crack down on that, okay, that is still a force. Countries use force to keep people. When Bangladesh used, hold on one second, when Pakistan used genocidal rape in the Bangladesh War of Independence, we supported Pakistan, the United States did. I'm not talking about US hypocrisy at the moment. I am not doing whataboutism. What I'm trying to tell you is every country uses force to keep territory. This is a war of territory, plain and simple. And go ahead.
So I think it's bad when countries use military force to annex other populations.
Yes, it's bad when we do it. It's bad when Russia does it.
Yes,
sure.
So,
I agree.
So that's not good.
So we agree on that. Let's see where we can find agreement. Okay. Can I ask you something, which I think I know about you, right?
Sure.
When we first spoke 2 years ago, you were constantly talking about fascists. Like, It's sort of like with the German anti-fascistische action, right? They saw social democrats as fascists. Like anyone who's not with us is against us, right? Do you still feel that way, or have you changed a little bit? Have you mellowed out? Is everyone a fascist except for socialists?
Me specifically, yes. No, I think that I don't think I've ever really thought that literally everyone who isn't a fascist is or who isn't a socialist a fascist. I've never believed in that like Stalinist social fascism bullshit. I think that liberals have a predisposition to support normalcy, the status quo, and that fascists are often quite good at portraying what they believe in as that. And for that reason, liberals aren't always the most reliable allies in anti-fascist action. But I don't think that means that every liberal is a fascist. It's just sort of a broader tendency.
Fair enough. But back in 2020, when Antifa was very active, you were saying things like, I think 50% of all the United States citizens are fascists.
Maybe
basically.
30%.
Okay. So here's my question to you. How can someone who wants to fight fascists, right? In Ukraine, you like turn a blind eye to nationalism, right wing, and suddenly, oh, there's almost no fascists there. Like, what is your standard for deciding if someone's a fascist or not?
There are plenty of fascists in Ukraine.
Okay. So you don't consider violence to be a useful way to fight fascists, correct?
Well, it really depends on the scale you're talking about. It worked with Hitler.
I don't mean punch a Nazi or, who is that guy? The neo-Nazis, punch a Nazi day. I just mean literally like what anti-fascistic action used to go around and pick fights with the brown shirts, and the brown shirts picked fights with them. How was that useful?
This is a very broad question. It depends historically. Sometimes street violence between anti-fascist and fascist groups can be beneficial. Sometimes it can't be. It usually feels like that stuff is really marginal, and the real wins are like the capture of courts and other like electoral systems that allow the implementation of state violence.
I would prefer the way that you have less violence is you have frameworks that people have to follow. Legal frameworks, religious frameworks, families, whatever. And the more of those you have, business, whatever, is how you tamp down on these flare-ups, okay? When you have these groups that have complete differences, like Shiites and Sunnis, whatever, I don't know, but they really care about their differences, or the people in the west of Ukraine and east of Ukraine, the last thing you want to do if you care about the people of Ukraine is to go to one of those groups and say, screw the other group, and start to increase the violence, right? Increase the animosity, because that's really bad, right? Would you agree that that's bad to exacerbate division?
Well, we're not really talking about exacerbating division. We're talking about them being invaded by a neighboring nation with a full military complement of hundreds of thousands.
But why aren't we talking about what led to that?
Well, I'm not talking about what led to that. I'm just talking like
why?
that because we're talking about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the subject of the discussion, which is not interpersonal
right, but it's
street
not
violence.
just the world didn't start yesterday, right? I mean,
no, the war.
Imperialist,
Russia did
right.
not invade Ukraine because Ukrainians were mean to Russians.
They were mean to the Donbass residents.
No,
however,
the Donbass
Russia...
residents were invaded by Russia. Russia paid secessionist groups in East Ukraine, gave them military equipment, and then later gave them troops.
What happened before Russia invaded the Donbass residents?
A Putin puppet was ousted by a democratic popular protest that led the cowardly leader to flee and shit himself.
Okay, that's one way to describe essentially a revolution toppling a government. Yes.
It was not. Wait, stop. The government didn't topple. The parliament, all of the orders of government were kept preserved. Yanukovych fled of his own will. He was not attacked. He chose to flee because he was a puppet and a coward.
Hold on. Everyone admits this, even the people in the right sector, even the people, Klitschko admits this. Yanukovych offered a deal pretty much agreeing to every demand of the people. They just says too little, too late, you got to go. Okay.
No, he didn't.
No,
he didn't. Not only was he doubling down on everything and killing protesters, he started passing incredibly authoritarian surveillance laws, giving people permission to like outwardly arrest any protesters on the street. There was a series of I am
not for authoritarian laws. I'm not for
Yanukovych. He was super for them.
Well, he's for himself. Yeah.
There was the Black Book of 12 laws or so. There was like 12 laws he tried to pass, some of which were so extreme his party wouldn't even back him on like half of them, and they were like insanely authoritarian. Like, yeah, we're basically just ending democracy thanks to these protesters, that kind of thing. I'd say it was good that he was ousted.
So if Zelensky bans opposition parties, opposition media, starts locking people up, you support that though because you want the outcome of Ukraine defeating Russia.
He hasn't
right?
banned opposition parties. He's banned the parties that are explicitly pro the government that is currently invading them. And good riddance. There are other parties. There are other parties that are not Zelensky's party that operate in Ukraine with no threat of legal reprisal. I'm okay with banning the parties that are pro the enemy.
When I'm just trying to understand literally like what your basis is, right? What you're coming from. You think Ukraine is a democracy since 2014.
It's been a democracy since before then, but it became a better one since.
Well, I mean, as a democracy, you don't need a revolution, just vote the guy out.
No. Democracies do not mean that you might never have to hold a protest that causes a leader to flee.
But not every few years, right? You had the Orange Revolution, same guy, Yanukovych, right? There they disputed his victory, which I can understand.
Because he cheated.
But here, it's something else. Here it causes a constitutional crisis for no freaking reason.
It didn't cause a constitutional crisis. The constitutional provisions were kept in order. There was some difficulty when it came to, like, finding a replacement leader. So during the meantime, the opposition leader held for about 6 months, after which elections were held and everything resumed as normal.
Please understand, by the way, I am for stability, so I'm happy when the new leader got elected. I'm happy when Poroshenko got elected. I was happy with Yatsenuk. He's a cool guy. Okay? What I'm saying to you is, what I'm not happy with is other countries coming to meddle and train insurgencies. And like you said, these fighters that you... And so did the United States and NATO countries did.
No, they didn't.
On the other side. Oh, really? They didn't send weapons and training to all of these right-wing paramilitary groups?
No. Literally, that has not been
substantiated. So it's literally like, okay, here's an article I have. Can I share my screen? I don't know if this is possible here.
You just link it to me.
Okay, sure. Oh, I see. Yeah, I could do that.
I might be familiar with the article that you're about to link. To my knowledge, no concrete evidence has ever been found of like a protracted state effort to embolden far-right protest groups. There's no need for us
according to human rights, like Human Rights Watch and others, a lot of arms were finding their way to the insurgent groups. Listen, it's not new. Syria, we did the same thing.
Of course American military equipment finds its way to radical groups. That's the case all over the world. The question is whether or not we actively aided them.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to send you. Sorry.
No worries.
Takes me a little bit of time. Here. Rights groups. Okay. This one is about Israel arming these groups. I'll send you one about the United States. Here's one. Okay, here you go. Now, back in 2018, it was still normal to write things like neo-Nazis. By the way, I don't think they're neo-Nazis, many of them. I think they are nationalists.
This is 2018, though.
Yeah. But again, you're ignoring everything that led up to this, right?
This is totally not the same thing. Human rights activists petitioned the court to cease Israeli arms exports to Ukraine since some of these weapons reach neo-Nazi elements. This is not even remotely the same thing. This is just arms manufacturers selling weapons to Ukraine broadly, and some of those trickling downstream to, like, Azov groups. This is not the same as NATO forces armed and trained neo-Nazis to oust Yanukovych, which was your initial claim.
That wasn't my claim. You're jumping around. Are you talking about 2014? Ousting Yanukovych happened in 2014.
Yeah,
right?
that was the thing that we did not directly support far-right groups in. This also is not direct support of far-right.
I'm not talking about look. I'm trying to tell you that the United States literally came over there. You could see videos of John McCain literally addressing the protesters. Look at those videos.
Fine.
You look at videos all the time.
I've seen those. They're fine.
Okay, so he's literally telling them to essentially screw Russia and go to Europe. He's meddling in their
when I think of election meddling, I usually think of covert or surreptitious means of tipping the scales.
Why can't overt be also?
Because if by overt election meddling you mean political leaders just saying, hey, we think you should do this, then everyone is meddling in everyone's democracy. That would mean that Joe Biden is meddling in, like, France's democracy when he says, like, I look forward to a partnership with this leader or something, because that means, like, any statement could be interpreted as meddling at that point.
Fair enough. What I'm saying to you is that's what happens all the time.
But
imperialist countries meddle in other people's elections. We meddled in Honduras elections.
No. What happened in Honduras is not the same as Americans saying, hey, fuck Russia, by the way. We meddle in Latin America. Like, we have people killed. We rig their elections. That's meddling. I don't think it's meddling for John McCain to be like, hey, this dipshit Yanukovych, he's pretty, like, dumb and gay. You shouldn't listen to him. Like, that's fine. I'm fine with that.
So let's see where you're not fine.
That's
So
just expressing
Russia,
an opinion.
so here's an example, right? If you really are on the left economically, so since the USSR fell, right, the Chicago School, the Chicago Boys kind of wrote that manual that they used, in Chile and other places with Pinochet. They basically said, okay, we're going to have what's called shock therapy. Okay, we're going to privatize everything. Turns out, gave it to the oligarchs. And then what happened was people tried it for a few years. They got inflation, they got terrible job security, and they rebelled against Yeltsin, okay, who was implementing this. Now, the United States went in there, and here's Time magazine, I sent you this, yanks to the rescue, the Russian president with the American flag on the cover of Time magazine. They made a movie called Spinning Boars about this very thing. Would you call that election meddling? It's covert. Would you call that election meddling?
Just Yeltsin having outwardly positive relationship with the West. I don't know if I would call that election meddling. We did a lot of really bad stuff with the shock doctrine, but I don't know if election meddling would, in that instance, be like the crime I would charge us with. Like, I would charge us with, like, exploiting the former Soviet states' deadened economies by rushing in with a bunch of money and financiers, saying like, hey, here's our strategy for rebuilding you, and it just involved, like, enriching oligarchs, you know? But that's not really election meddling. That's more like economic rape, which is obviously really bad, but yeah.
Well, okay. So I think we have some agreement here, but let me give you a bit of context you might not know. In 1993, there was almost the beginnings of a civil war and a Euromaidan in Russia. So there was this constitutional crisis where Yeltsin wanted to dissolve the parliament, and the parliament had a no confidence vote of Yeltsin. Yeltsin fired on the parliament and essentially had a very, very abysmal approval ratings going into, he had 6% approval. Okay, even compared to Biden, that's really low going into the election. And then he won. Okay, so it's not just like, oh, we did a few things. Like, we wanted to make sure the communists didn't come back.
Are you
right?
suggesting that we directly rigged those votes? If that's so, I haven't looked into that, but if we did, then that would obviously be meddling.
Sure, so your standard is just us actually rigging the other country's votes. It's not helping a candidate win by any other means.
No, I don't think it's meddling when it's just a political figure openly stating what they believe. Because if that's the case, everyone's meddling everywhere all the time. Like, if McCain says like, "Hey, Euromaidan protesters, we support you and fuck Russia," like, that's definitely involvement. But when I think of
goes
meddling,
over there. He goes over there to large crowds, which later went up to take arms against their government.
Well, they were protesters freely exercising their legal rights in the democratic state of Ukraine.
So you have no problem with Iran fomenting a revolution in Yemen with the Houthi rebels, right? No problem.
I don't know enough about the details of this to meaningfully compare them, but is what happened in Yemen a bunch of peaceful protesters legally enacting their right to protest the government and then being killed by the government?
Initially, a lot of the Arab Spring is exactly like that. Yes.
Well, then, I would have to look at it in a case-by-case basis.
Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is I care about outcomes. Thinking people, intelligence is about looking for patterns. We know how proxy wars start, what they lead to, how many deaths there are, how much suffering there is. We know what's coming, and it's evil to ignore that. And what you're saying is, well, as long as we could blame Putin,
no,
anything's fair game.
So,
right?
So this is where we trend from like dumb to dishonest, right? I've not said what you were saying. I'm saying Russia invaded. The excuses they gave for their invasion were incoherent and at times blatantly fascist. It was not like saving the good people of the Donbass. They've essentially admitted this. Putin talked about restoring the borders of the Russian Empire in his opening excuse. There were a medley of false flag attacks and jump starts to attempt to justify the war from the beginning. Russia's not acting in good faith, as evidenced by the fact that they basically never have since Putin came into government. No, not with the equivocacy. Ukraine had territorial sovereignty. They were invaded in 2014, had territory annexed in 2014. Russia pushed them to agree to agreements to ceasefires in the Minsk Accords, which Russia then did not follow themselves. They never even pretended to. Russia lied constantly about the degree of involvement they had with these separatists that they funded in Donbass, lied about having soldiers there, lied about bringing equipment there. All of this has been, from day one, clear imperialism. Now, given the fact that Russia has been the antagonist this entire time, I think it's fair for me to say it's kind of on them what's happening. And Ukraine has only two real things that it can do. It can fight or it can give up. If it fights, which is what's happening right now, many people die. But there's a chance that the good guys win. And I do mean good guys in this instance. And
but I'm not saying
everything.
I agree with everything.
If they surrender, then we essentially normalize the idea that any bigger country can just annex whatever territory they want. Russia can just gobble up whatever they want. The United States can gobble up whatever they want. Oh, no consequences, you know, because if they fight back, it's on them for prolonging the violence. It would be like blaming the people of Iraq for fighting back after we invaded.
Okay, so there's so much here, and I'm going to try to keep a track of everything going backwards. Okay, so just allow me to answer. First of all, I blame the United States for invading Iraq. Okay, they shouldn't have acted rashly. There was a diplomatic solution.
Don't play the blame game.
Hold on, let me finish though. I'm about to tell you a big but. Okay, so even though I blame the United States for invading Iraq, and I blame George W. Bush for doing what he called for a hot second a crusade and avenging for his daddy's leaving and so on. Who knows why he did it, depending on who you ask. But even though I blame the United States for invading Iraq, which led to up to a million excess deaths in the ensuing occupation, I also can blame Saddam Hussein for ousting inspectors and not doing more to prevent, by complying with, doing more than he had to in order to prevent any pretext for the United States to invade. Yes, I can blame a government, not the people. I don't blame the people. They're complete victims, but their leaders should have done more to prevent. Yes, so I can blame both their leaders to some extent, as well as the United States. I can chew gum and walk at the same time. Do you understand?
The difference there, I guess, even if you wanted to draw that comparison, right? Like, as if anyone during the Iraq War would be like, well, from an anti-imperialist perspective, maybe if Saddam Hussein hadn't XYZ, you know, even if you wanted to go down that road, the critical difference would be that Saddam Hussein was a mass-murdering tyrant who killed hundreds of thousands of his own people, whereas Zelensky was a middlingly popular democratic leader who never did anything to invite the antagonism or invasion.
Sure. I mean, I agree. And thanks for not making comparisons to Hitler for everybody. Yes, not everyone is Hitler. Not everyone is Saddam Hussein. But the operating principle here, the operative principle is you can blame the government of the victim country but without blaming the population, right? I make a distinction between Ukrainians and Ukraine. Do you? When you say that Ukraine wants to do something, you really have this vision that like the majority should coerce the minority to do whatever. Right.
That is how democracies work. If a lot of people want the government to do something and they vote for candidates that will do that thing, then that's the direction it goes. Yeah. We haven't really decided on a better system than that for organizing groups of people.
Yes, there are way better systems than that. Of course, that's what leads to the wars, right?
So defending yourself against an invasion, what if 5% of the population just wants to run, then everyone surrenders? What?
No, here's been your entire argument this whole time, right? It's like, Russia invaded, I win. And it's like,
okay, wait again. I'm gonna get mean if you do that again. No. Okay. That's not been my argument. There are two things Ukraine can do. It can fight back or surrender. I gave you a reason why I prefer them fighting back. The people of Ukraine overwhelmingly prefer fighting back. The fact that you keep reducing my argument to, Russia did it first, is like, this would be like arguing with a Holocaust denier. And they were like, well, actually, I think the Jews were the ones who were at fault. And then I'm like, okay, but Germany did the Holocaust. And you're like,
let's do that one. Let's not shy
Germany
away from
did. What's with this blame game? Germany did the Holocaust. What are you, a child? Everything happens because of things that happened in the past.
Great question. Okay, can we take that example, because I think it's very illustrative. Okay, everyone jumps to the Hitler thing, but I think that's actually very good to analyze. I don't obviously blame the Jews for being massacred in the Holocaust. I'm a Jew myself. And that wouldn't affect if I wasn't. But here's my point. Do you know what led to the rise of the Nazis? What led to the rise of the Nazis was sanctions from France. The Versailles Treaty made it so that Germany paid reparations after World War I and kept doing it until the Deutsche Mark was so worthless that they were burning these things. And by the way, there was also a worldwide depression. So when the Anschluss happened, and if all Hitler ever did was just annex Austria, and that was it, no genocides, no violence.
Leaders that annex neighboring territories based on shared ethnic identity tend to be the ones that also do genocides. There's a concurring tendency there.
Hold on one moment. What led to the rise of far-right, racially crazy ideology Nazis, okay, National Socialist Party, was the fact that there was a terrible economic situation that was engineered by France, and Britain told France, stop, knock it off, it's done already. But so people supported these authoritarian dictators, just like they do in North Korea and other places, because the sanctions radicalize the population.
Curious then how a bunch of other...
Let me just say one thing.
How a bunch of other nations...
This is the important takeaway. Wait. Can I just say the takeaway? Can I just say, just 10 seconds?
What you're doing right now is literally anti-Semitism. I hope you realize that. Like, this is the Nazi conspiracy. When you say engineered by the French, engineered by which groups in the French government? No, that's what they say.
It is not anti-Semitic, because I'm not blaming Jews for anything. The Jews were victims in all this, but the countries that caused the people of Germany, and by the way, they didn't elect the Nazis. There was a civil infighting between communists and Nazis just having to take over the whole government with the false flag Reichstag fire.
Hindenburg
the point being that if France had just knocked it off and normalized relations with Germany, they would never have elected probably Nazis, and 6 million Jews would not have been killed in what was essentially a genocide.
Okay, so let's say it's 1942 and you're delivering the speech to a group of like allied political figures, all right? So what's your suggestion then? Do we like not invade Germany because France was bad with the repayment process?
No, see, this is just the
answer,
thing, right?
Just
my answer. Here's my answer. This time around, maybe that's what we'll have to do. But we're not going to learn the lesson next time, because next time we're going to create the bad situation and then say, well, look, there's an invasion. I guess we got to now have millions of people die. Look, to me, that the problem starts before the invasion. Why don't we look at patterns like intelligent people and try to prevent invasions from happening in the first place?
Should we have preemptively nuked Russia? What's your suggestion?
Are you literally like I've been telling you what my suggestion is?
Russia's
diplomacy.
Russia's been no. So diplomacy is like the retard answer here, right? Everyone says like,
no, I can get into
wait.
No.
Oh, I would have prevented this conflict with diplomacy, right? Like Ukraine has just been sitting on their ass this entire time. They've spent the past 8 years sitting there.
Ukraine is not the one that's supposed to do it. It's the United States and NATO countries.
Ukraine has been sitting there fearing an invasion from Russia this entire time. If Russia needs to talk it out with NATO countries to not invade Ukraine, then they're the ones at fault. You realize that, right?
No, what you should realize is that all the countries that meddle in Ukraine and lead to an escalation of violence from what was a small, essentially skirmish.
But you haven't provided evidence of any meddling, and you haven't provided evidence that anyone else made anything any worse.
You haven't given me a chance to. Sure, I can provide a lot of evidence. Russia meddled too. I'm not saying, look, if I was to blame Russia the thing I would blame them for the most out of all of the stuff which they've done was just egregious. In Bucha, war crimes, not sitting down with Zelensky and not having another Normandy format. I can blame them, and I do. This is what you're conflating, by the way. It's not like I'm saying Russia's right. I am saying we live in the real world.
Well, I don't think you're saying anything.
Well, why did you have me on the show then if you're not letting me say anything?
Because there's value in showing that people who have your positions don't have anything to say.
You're just not letting me speak.
You've spoken, I assure you, for longer than I have. Listen, you keep alluding to this like diplomatic option that isn't there. Russia did this. They chose to do this. Sometimes, no, Russia didn't follow it. Russia has to follow it for it to happen. Like they have to pull people out of the area. So that's it. Minsk, like the simplicity of this statement, it belies like how little you've thought about this. Minsk means nothing. because a ceasefire can't work if one party won't abide by it. So there was no point. Russia can't be
Why
negotiated
did it
with.
not abide by it?
What?
You're like a guy who describes one side of a fight, like your camera shows just one side of the fight.
Well,
Oh, look,
Russia
this guy's
did
punching.
invade.
Why is he punching? Why?
So Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 by supplying separatists and providing troops and military equipment there.
Why?
Because they didn't like that their puppet fled.
No.
Yes.
Okay, that's the only reason, right?
Yes. Because
Okay.
Putin wanted control of Ukraine and didn't want them to go to the West. So he tried the first method, which is to have a political puppet take control of the government and slowly wean away their democracy, which is what Putin was doing at that time in Russia, successfully, mind you. And when that failed, because Ukraine held protests, Yanukovych fled, the next option was, okay, well then we'll literally just kill them. We'll bully them out. We'll starve the country. And that's exactly what they did in the Donbass region.
You're conflating all these years. They starved the country in 2014?
Yeah, Ukraine did not have a lot of money and basically no military force at the time, so forcing them to commit troops to defend against a bunch of separatists in the east actually did do a lot to fuck their economy. You can see that
Exactly.
if you look GDP.
By the way, if I was to blame Russia, I'm saying out of all the fucked up things that Russia has done, the worst thing it did was to arm separatists. Like I've been saying, the United States does this with Manuel Noriega and in Syria, and Russia did it. It's fucked up. Yes, they've armed separatists.
Ukraine hasn't
if they
done
didn't
anything.
do this, right? But what I'm saying, and what I've come on the show to say, is as a libertarian, I'm saying that's fucked up what these countries are doing, undermining and arming separatists. I agree with you. But what I'm saying is, if separatists like Catalonia or indeed Hong Kong, okay, that happen to now join China because an empire just kicked it around like a football. British Empire says, here you go, China. If the entire Hong Kong comes out and says, we don't want to have China install our governors, we want democracy. So I think the UN, and I think this is what our conversation should be about, should have frameworks to respect the will of the people on the ground instead of the territorial integrity of large countries.
What are you suggesting right now? What should have been done? With Hong Kong, the agreement was one country, two systems. Then China broke that agreement, started disappearing their leaders and protesters, and then the Hong Kong protesters lost. What's the solution here? In both cases, you have the larger government acting in bad faith.
You got to understand, you're talking to a guy who builds decentralized systems and is an entrepreneur. So I think in terms
Your
of
own
creating
mind,
new
your thought
systems-
process, is that the decentralized system to which you refer? What we're talking
do
about?
you want to argue, or I'm trying to introduce new ideas here? You asked me a question.
The idea
What is
here,
the solution, right?
diplomacy isn't a new idea. We invented it a million years ago. It's not novel.
It's not. I'm not talking in sound bites. I can go into detail and substance if you let me. Would you just let me talk for a 30-second stretch of time at a time? Go ahead, say whatever you want to say, but leave me 30 seconds to respond.
I've given you
without
30-second
getting
blocks
cut off.
every time we've talked. Look, at the end of the day, if a larger, more powerful country doesn't want to engage in good faith, they won't. Power and military might are, at the end of the day, what dictates the limits of what countries feel they can do. Russia has been bullying Ukraine around for a long time, and now finally, in an effort to commit to that policy, they've failed. Ukraine ended up having more teeth than they expected. China basically ended the Hong Kong
I agree it had more teeth
protests.
than expected. Okay, so may I respond also for 30 seconds like this?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so you asked me what the solution is. The solution in a nutshell is to have more frameworks. Like, for example, if a country launches a nuke, there should be a framework for de-escalating that and say, oh, okay, well, here's what we do to make sure that we don't destroy the world. There is no framework right now. What I'm saying is there should be frameworks for when people want self-determination and they have a referendum, that referendum should be overseen by the OSCE or whoever, and then that referendum, there should be a process for these countries to all sign yet another treaty, like the Geneva Conventions.
What if
to
they
say,
just don't
look,
abide by it?
Okay, great question. I can answer it, but I just feel like you're going to cut me off in 5 seconds. I'm sorry. The countries abide by things which have been written down and agreed upon multilaterally, okay, in the UN. So the UN has many of these agreements, has a Paris Climate Accords it tried to do, but the United States wouldn't join that or whatever. It had what I'm trying to say is the Geneva Conventions is a great example. There were multiple ones where war became better, meaning better in the sense that civilians weren't killed wantonly that they used to. There's now a concept called war crimes where there wasn't before. So the UN has the ability to solve a lot of these things if the countries are getting together. The problem is the UN is made up of representatives of, drumroll, countries. And countries, all of them have one thing in common. They don't want separatists to carve off little pieces of them. So they all agree to not let the separatists have a voice. And that's why libertarian is not happy with that system.
What if countries just don't listen? War crimes happen all the time. Russia's committed them in this
countries
conflict.
Never name me a country that listened to its separatists and peacefully let them go.
There are no separatists here. Ukraine is a separate country. And we're not talking, I'm not saying that they should listen. I want Ukraine to fight.
What? Okay, so there have been referenda.
No. Your suggestion is diplomacy. What happens if Russia just doesn't abide by the diplomatic agreements?
Okay, first of all, let's talk about whether it's willing to abide by the diplomatic agreements.
What happens if they don't want to? Because they're already ignoring a ton of them.
So even the Elon Musk suggestion, was let the people on the ground vote. Let them all come back.
No.
And let's abide by whatever they want.
Stop with propaganda. Okay.
It's not a propaganda. It's what Elon Musk literally tweeted.
Russia faced international sanctions after the annexation of Crimea. What changed? Is that not an international framework?
No. It's
the UN condemnations followed by.
Where's the framework? It's literally the law for thee, not for me. When has the United States ever faced sanctions for violent actions?
So hold on. So you gave the Geneva Convention as an example of a framework that has worked. So what happens when a country breaks the Geneva Convention?
Well, at least the law is on the books, and what happens is that it's documented. War crimes are investigated. In The Hague, people are prosecuted, sometimes executed. But more importantly, there is a framework to refer to. So the International Criminal Court is another example. The United States simply threatens the International Court whenever it even tries to investigate war crimes of the United States. What I'm saying is there has to be something that we all respect.
There already is.
Right?
Everyone but Russia. The UN and the ICC have already condemned Russia for their behavior. Basically, every international organization.
The UN has just condemned the United States right now about Cuba in November.
Wait, shh.
It doesn't matter. These countries don't care about these condemnations.
We're not talking. So any organization that condemns Russia must then never condemn America? Isn't condemning America evidence of it being impartial?
You're strawmanning everything I'm saying.
No. You're just not saying anything. Your example right there was just, hey, the organization is impartial and will condemn America. Therefore, they won't listen to it. So if they condemn America, they won't listen to it. But if they don't condemn America, they also won't listen to it.
Correct. No,
okay, so you're
you're
saying nothing. So there's nothing. You're not saying anything.
No, I'm not saying nothing.
Words.
I'm saying there's the ideal solution, which is we keep making frameworks. Like in software.
No.
You keep improving the law.
You are absolutely
keep improving edge cases.
You are
and
absolutely
bad things happening.
Wait.
Bug,
no,
right?
you hold on. You are absolutely a software guy because you're saying nothing. Like this, we have to use like AI algorithm trends to determine the will.
How is a software guy
I'm condescending. I don't know if this like kind of talk is better left to software development, but in geopolitics, what if we simply developed an international No, not that one. No, not that one. No. Okay, well, Russia broke the last 17 ones and got condemned 85 times for the whole Crimea situation. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Like this doesn't mean anything.
You've got this. This is the other thing. It's another topic, but focusing exclusively on how Russia is the bad actor and never any other country.
We are talking about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So yeah, I am talking about Russia. That is true.
Yeah. But that's all you ever talk about. Have you talked about Yemen? Have you talked about a far larger humanitarian crisis that's happening in Russia?
Well, I mostly talk about America because I'm an American. I don't know what relevance this is. You came on to talk about the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
I did, and that's why I'm trying to stick to that topic. But you asked me what is the solution. So there's the ideal solution and there's a solution in today's world, right? So the ideal solution is you actually, these countries have to come together and start to talk about the rights of the child. For example, another one would be if you're born in a country, you should get birthright citizenship. That would solve the Palestinian refugee crisis.
Okay, then why don't you call Putin and get him to agree to that?
Why don't I call Putin?
Yeah.
Do you see how your solutions are
Oh, was that
like
unrealistic?
advisable. Yeah, I'm gonna call Putin. What's his number? Fine, give me his number
You
right now.
probably
Let's
Google
get
it.
him on the podcast.
Like, what do you want me to
I
say?
mean,
You're like, we need to get all countries together and get them to agree to things. Oh,
look,
thank you for solving the problem. We've been struggling with that one for a while. Thank God. Somebody finally came up
okay,
with the
let me
idea
state
of
the obvious.
international
Neither you
cooperation.
nor I, with your audience, have any power to solve these geopolitical problems. Okay, so yeah, I agree.
No,
Hey,
actually,
Greg,
we do. We can donate
yeah,
money to Ukraine so they can afford more HIMARS.
you mean our government?
No, you can if you want.
How am I going to donate a nuclear bomb or one of these
You
things?
donate
Look,
money, and
Ukraine
they
had
use
nukes.
that money to buy weapons.
Why would I buy weapons so they could kill Ukrainians?
Yeah,
Every
no,
bomb
wait, no,
that gets
to
shipped
kill, wait,
there
no, 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 to
explodes
kill
on Ukrainian
Russians.
soil. It kills Ukrainians. Every single weapon. That's what I'm talking about. That same misguided morality killed 1 million Afghans. Do you care? Does anyone? Does Brzezinski care? He's
Ukraine
the
wanting
architect
to
of-
defend itself against invaders is the
Oh yeah.
same as Afghanistan being attacked by a Soviet Union. What?
I'm saying to you that Afghanistan was in the exact same situation, the exact same morality was pushed and said, we are going to help Afghanistan as long as it takes, and then Afghanistan is going to drive the Soviets out, and then they're going to glory to Afghanistan. The
So
thing is,
it's
a
the
million people
Afghans'
died.
fault for defending themselves from the Soviet invasion?
This is how you cast 1 million people dying. No, they weren't defending themselves against the Soviet invasion, just like they weren't defending themselves against U.S. invasion since 2001. There's a complex set of factors.
The Afghan resistance forces, though.
Sure, the Afghan Arabs and all the people that traveled there were defending themselves against Soviet invasion. Sure, and the government
Wait,
of
do you think
Afghanistan
the
did not
Afghans
welcome the
wanted
Soviets.
to be controlled by the largely infidel Russian military occupation?
The answer is that in every one of these cases, there is a similar pattern. History repeats itself, or it rhymes.
Of big
and
countries
we see
invading
millions of people die. Do you care about this?
Yeah, so we shouldn't get Russia to invade countries?
No, because Russia is a special case of a general pattern. This happens all the
Yeah,
time.
they keep fucking killing innocent people. It's crazy. I agree.
I know. If only Russia wasn't doing it, I guess everyone would be at peace, right?
No. Did I say that?
Well, you keep saying Russia when I'm trying to tell you
Yeah, we
general
are
pattern.
talking about the Russia-Ukraine war.
But we are also saying it's a special case of proxy wars, which can be avoided.
I'm not saying
Right.
that. I don't think it could have been avoided.
I am saying that.
Well, yeah, but you haven't
I
given an
came on to
example of how it
say-
could be avoided. Through diplomacy, right, of course.
I mean, I can be organized and say three things. One, and we could take any one of these three topics. One, it's a proxy war between NATO and Russia that uses Ukraine as a battlefield, okay, for influence and territory.
It's a very
One.
novel position that I haven't heard before. Please continue.
Okay. Two,
The Ukrainian people want to defend themselves.
now they do.
No.
You've pushed.
Wait, are you saying at the beginning of the Ukrainian war, they were like, actually, I could give or take being invaded by
Dude,
Russia.
you're like the people that say that Gaza elected Hamas in 2006, therefore they chose to what's coming to them. Dude,
Yes, I'm
most
exactly
people in
like that.
Gaza. Let me just finish. Most people in Gaza were 2 years old in 2006. There's a lot of babies there.
That's
were
my
born.
main
So-
position, that 2-year-old Gazans are at fault for Hamas or whatever. That's what I believe.
Okay, so how can you? Okay, so you agree with me that saying the country chose something, okay, or whatever, is oversimplifying, and saying that most Ukrainians want to fight, excluding what led up to it, excluding all the other Ukrainians who don't want to fight, excluding the 11 million families in Russia and Ukraine that have relatives, excluding all stories
Yeah,
of love,
Russia
and
shouldn't have
only
invaded
focusing
them.
on the stories of hate. And you're saying that's why we should give more weapons to kill more Ukrainians.
No,
right?
Russia to Ukrainians to defend themselves against the invasion that is currently happening.
Here, I just want to be clear. I want the war to end. I want.
How
the
wait,
people
how do you
dying.
want the war to end?
How?
Yes.
Ideally, that Putin just wakes up one day and is like, "Oh, I'm not going to be president anymore. This other guy is going to come in.
Wouldn't
this
that
other
be
guy
nice?
is gonna pay reparations, take out all the troops, and Ukraine's just going to live happily ever after. And Putin's just going to be like put in a prison cell. That's okay. So you're saying like the ideal world? Sure, that. Do you have a plan B here, or is that pretty much the only plan?
You know my plan A. So so outside of this delusional fantasy, like how do you want the war to end?
By diplomacy, at least try to have peace talks.
Okay, so diplomacy like what? Give provisions.
Okay, first you have to meet with no preconditions. You have to not assassinate the diplomats. Okay, these are like basic things. Third, you have to empower the diplomats to actually negotiate. And fourth, this is the one which is unfortunately not going to happen, but I would want it to be, televise the negotiations.
Okay, but
I was speaking to these
the
diplomats.
actual...
We don't know what happened in these 2 hours that they disbanded after 2 hours. They weren't taking it seriously in March.
The
They could
actual...
have prevented all this.
The actual provision. Like what, because right now Russia's, like, the only thing they want is to hold their existing territory. The one that they've already...
No, that's where you're wrong. As
Wait,
a libertarian,
I'm sorry, wait,
Russia
has agreed to cede territory?
It's not that Russia, yes, Russia would agree to cede territory.
They would.
Elon
How do you
Musk
know
suggestion.
that?
Because they agreed, the politicians of Russia tweeted at Elon Musk saying, yeah, we accept that. He said, let the people decide on the ground. What's wrong with this, by the way?
Okay,
What's
that's not the same as them giving it up.
No, but they said we would abide. We would give it up.
Russia said they would abide by the provisions of a future
by this fantasy
decision?
scenario of the UN making another referendum.
Okay,
like
what happens if Russia just like does the referendum and then stays in the areas
not
afterwards?
Russia. No, not Russia. Everyone gets the hell out. Get the civilians who live.
Wait, what if Russia just never leaves?
What's that?
What if it's like the Minsk Accords and Russia just never leaves? They're like, oh yeah, we'll do elections here, and then they just never pull out the troops from those areas.
Now I think we're actually about to have an agreement here. First, you need to have a goal to aim at, like for example, the grain export deal. Okay. Then you get everyone, you mediate, you get people to the table, and I've seen Israel and Hamas get together. I've seen the PKK even get together with Erdogan. I think so. What I'm basically saying is, I know that people that have 11 million families there, don't want the war, can get together for what is normally done all the time.
It's not a democracy. It's just Putin. What if he just lies and keeps troops there?
That's another thing I disagree with. It is a democracy.
Russia is a democracy.
Are there elections?
Do you believe the results of the Russian elections are reflective of a fair and free democracy?
Here's what I'm going to say about that. You need a mechanism, first of all.
Well, we need mechanisms. Okay, can I just get an answer on...
I don't have enough expertise
What happens if Russia just lies? What if they just...
I don't have enough expertise to know how trustworthy the Russian elections are. I'm sure they're more trustworthy than other countries say. They're less trustworthy than Russia's politicians say. Somewhere in between is the answer. But it is a democracy to some extent.
Well, Assad has elections. North Korea has elections.
Look, is MBS in Saudi Arabia, is he an unelected dictator? Yes or no?
In Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Why don't you use the same language with our allies that you do with...
do you think I don't think Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship?
I'm asking you. Yeah. I don't know. I don't watch your show that much.
Why would you ask me that? Like it's it's a monarchy. They're one of the most evil countries on earth.
Okay. Well, some monarchies are okay. Like Morocco, the king doesn't kill anybody.
No, I don't like monarchies.
Okay. So what I'm trying to tell, that's a separate discussion, by the way. I could go into that. Look, you have a democracy where one party reneges on the previous agreements. Like, for example, Clinton made an agreement with Kim Jong-il of North Korea not to get a nuke. There was an agreement made, just lower the sanctions. Then Bush comes in, and the Republicans totally nix the agreed framework, okay? Say, oh, we don't want that. North Korea gets a nuke. Now with Iran, same thing. Tom Cotton and the Republicans openly say, don't trust Obama's deal. We're going to rip it up as soon as we can. So a democracy is great internally. I love living in the United States. I love this freedom of speech we could have. But externally, you can't trust what one party... I mean, Jackson...
So what happens...
The Trail of Tears. I mean,
Russia just doesn't abide by the agreement, and they just don't pull their troops out.
What... that happens all the time.
Yes, I agree. So what happens if it happens again?
Okay, what happens when a nuclear power does not completely...
Can you just answer the question?
Yes.
So you're saying like this happens all the time. I know. That's why I'm asking you what happens if that happens. Like I'm not describing an unlikely scenario here.
What happens is you work it out with them. You listen to why are they doing it? You address in publicly. You have public televised discussions with
Was
not
North
behind
Korea
closed
able to
doors.
do this with the U.S., the Bush administration?
Say that again.
Was North Korea able to do this with the Bush administration? What about
Publicly,
Iran with Trump's government after we reneged on the nuclear deal?
I'm saying both parties need to have a televised Zoom call and explain why they are not abiding by the agreement. They would say, "You are not doing this. Well, you're not doing this. All right, let's both do that thing."
Okay.
That's how it can happen.
So what if
right?
that happens and then Russia just keeps not pulling troops out of the area?
How about we try to make a framework that at least they will break, but at least like
they would have already broken the framework by not following the accords
so you're
of the
saying,
agreement.
So like Erdogan would say, why even make the grain deal? Russia's just not. What happens if Russia just, what happens if Ukraine has a drone that blows up somewhere in Crimea?
Just what this isn't.
What
Man, this isn't
happens?
difficult. What happens if the peace treaty that we try to sign between Ukraine and Russia doesn't follow the accords on? They keep their troops in the areas.
You still make as much effort at putting spelling out what happens if you have a contract and someone breaks the contract. Well, it's better than not having one and having total misunderstanding.
So what do you do after that?
First of all, it might never even get to that because what you do after that is you listen to the other parties. Oh, you guys have a red line about Ukraine and Georgia? Oh, you don't want us to station nuclear sharing with them, nuclear weapons? Okay, we're going to put that in the agreement like we didn't do with Gorbachev. We're going to do now. We're going to say the nuclear weapons stay here.
Okay,
They'll never
so what
cross over here.
happens,
for example,
if Russia backs out of that or doesn't follow their side of things?
That's like saying, what happens if Russia launches a nuke at the United States?
Well, I can actually answer that question, though, so it's not like that, because you can't answer the question that I'm asking
what
you.
happens if Russia...
No. I'll get to it,
Go ahead.
but you need to answer my question, which is, what do you do if Russia says they will have a ceasefire with Ukraine and peace predicated on an election held in areas currently occupied by Russia, and then Russia refuses to pull troops out of those areas, essentially meaning that the resulting vote would be null because it would be done under military occupation.
So I'll try to, in good faith.
So what would you do if they just didn't follow that?
Yeah, I'm going to try to answer your question in as good faith as I can. Okay. So your thinking is usually black and white. So you're saying like, here's 0, here's 1, and what happens if it's 1? And what I'm trying to say is, before that ever happens, let's say that both sides signal their willingness and openness to this Elon Musk deal, let's say. Then they get negotiators with an open televised thing, and they flesh out the details of that deal. So everyone knows what everyone's obligations are.
Yes, and then they don't follow it.
Yes, and then, see, this is where, in your mind, Russia's ruled by one guy who's Superman, and he's able to just do whatever he wants. But that's not how it works. The Russian public supports this war, and that's really bad. Just like the Iraq War was supported by the American public, who reelected Bush after they knew all the atrocities. So what I'm saying is, yes, you need to get the publics to support it.
Okay, what happens if the Russian government, which controls the Russian military, which is the occupying force here, does not remove their troops? So skip all of the remaining we should diplomacy. Okay, wait. Let's just make sure we're on the same step, okay? We're skipping past all of the frameworks and all of the will do diplomacies. Russia is just not following this side of the agreement.
But do you understand that those months of building that up and publicly committing to this thing or that thing, just like the grain deal, publicly commits Russia's leaders in front of their own public to certain actions? You do understand that, right?
That's super crazy. If only Putin had the power to do things like manipulate the public opinion with the complete control over state media he has. And it might,
Sure. And George W. Bush completely manipulated.
Why do you keep talking about America? This is about stop. You know what my answer is? What happens if the Bush administration lies about the Iraq War? You know what my answer is to that? I don't have one.
Say that.
No. I know. I didn't say you said that. Here's my answer to the question you can't answer. What happens if Trump backs out of the Iran nuclear accords like he did? You know what happens? Iran is fucked. They can't do
No.
anything. No, stop, stop. No, no, no. I'm teaching you. We're learning today.
Okay.
What happens to North Korea? What happens with North Korea after we back out of an agreement with them? They're fucked because we're the big boys. What happens if Russia fucks over Ukraine? Guess what? This time, the little guy doesn't have to get fucked over. Ukraine is strong enough to defend itself. That's why this matters. Most of the time, the bigger bully country, there's nothing you can do about them. We're fucking America. We do bad shit all the time and nobody can tear into us. But in this one instance, the underdog has the ability to prevail. And I think it is disgusting that somebody who calls themselves a libertarian, which is defined by being anti-authority, and a socialist, which is defined by international solidarity,
I'm a left
would
libertarian.
reject...
I wouldn't say I'm a socialist.
You did.
Yeah.
Would reject...
I'm left libertarian. Yeah.
Would reject a rare opportunity for the little guy to win here. That's what can happen. We have a chance this time.
Yeah, but okay, I got you. And by the way, I love where you're coming from with your passion, and I get it. This is where you're coming from. You're saying, look, China, Russia, United States, we're all bastards. And yes, we bombed Laos more than any country in history. And yes, we invaded Iraq, and yes, Libya, and all this stuff. But in this one instance with Ukraine, we have a chance to show all imperialists in the world, no wait, only Russia, to show that in this one chance they're going to win. And then we're going to go right back to invading Haiti and Mexico.
You know, I would prefer one good thing happening to zero good things happening. Yes. And it's not our fault that Russia was stupid enough to commit to this invasion.
But yes, I agree they're in a quagmire and they were stupid and they were malicious and they trained terrorists. And we do that too. And I agree with all that. The difference between you and me is I want to solve the, you know, when bad shit happens, this is what's called science, technology. We figure shit out. We put in new things, technology, laws. We fix that shit. There was a time when women didn't have as many rights as they have.
A good way of deterring future imperialism might be a very public example of an imperialist country failing and crippling themselves after attempting to annex a neighboring.
You know what's an even better way though?
Wait, is the other way? Wait, can we do both? What if we did both? Whatever your way is and my way. Let's do both of them.
Let's do both.
Okay.
Let's do both.
Okay.
When are we going to do the second thing then? The frameworks.
Well, whenever we're able to.
Oh, we're not gonna do those.
Right
No,
now, I'm sorry we can't
back.
instantly do your made-up fantasy version of
No,
the good thing, but we can do my thing right now.
Disingenuous.
We can do my thing. We can do it. Ukraine is winning. We can do my thing.
First of all, I don't agree it's winning.
I know you don't. Because you exclusively consume Russian propaganda sources.
If I thought that they were winning, at this point, I would say, look, you've already lost 100,000 people on both sides. Just fucking drive the Russians out. Yeah, sure.
They're winning.
At this particular moment in time.
Territory. They reclaimed a huge swath of territory just a couple days ago.
Yeah. Do you know how a stock? You're like a stock. You know. Oh, look, the Bears won, and then the Bulls won, and then the Bears come in. Look.
What? They've been doing nothing but losing this entire time. Russia's been losing territory nonstop for months. It's been military
so never
defeat
invest in
after
crypto
military
because
defeat.
it's been losing value since last year. Never
Yes, actually. Also, don't invest in crypto because it is a pump and dump scheme that was designed by billionaires to fizz money out of stupid poor people.
Never short crypto because it's always going up. I mean, that's a silly argument, isn't it?
Yeah, that would have been a silly argument if it was one that I made.
Just because something is happening when you look at the graph for the last day doesn't mean that it's never going to reverse.
Please,
what are you talking about?
I can't talk with you about crypto too. We can't do everything.
Forget crypto. I'm trying to tell you a basic thing. Just because an army is winning at some point, in the Civil War,
for the entire past
was winning
year.
At some point. The Confederacy was winning. That doesn't mean that that's it. Let's just continue the war.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So, do you have any processes by which you can determine the likely outcome of future events, or is it just like pissing in the wind?
In this case, in a war where you have new technology and drones, no, I don't. I think Ukraine could actually beat the pants off of Russia because these generals like McGregor and others don't understand that new technology doesn't matter who fires that button on the drone or on the missiles. They're self-propelling. Who cares if Ukrainians are fighting it or you gave them the technology? It's way better than the Russian one. So yeah, if you keep giving them the technology, I think they're going to win.
Well, then there we go. The underdog, the victim of imperialist aggression, can win if we just keep giving them large explosives. Let's keep doing it.
That's possible, that's possible. And at this point, I might even agree with you. But what I'm saying is I'd like to have the conversation where you said we should do both, right? We should have the frameworks afterwards. And what I'm saying is you're disingenuous about that because you don't really seem to care about that conversation at all. I want this to stop in the whole world, not just in Ukraine. I want it to stop in Yemen. I want it to stop in Taiwan. I want the frameworks to happen right now to start the countries to start listening to each other. Right? That's what I'm saying.
Then let's do both. And since right now my thing is happening at the moment, we can do that, and we can work on the other thing too.
Yemen is happening right now.
Okay, what do you want to do about Yemen, and what does it have to do with Ukraine?
It has to do with the fact that it's part of the same pattern that's been going on that we need to fix.
Okay, so maybe we can help fix this pattern by demonstrating that countries that are invaded do have the ability to defend themselves against global hegemons. And the second thing, put in the frameworks to de-escalate conflicts before they start or even after they start. The frameworks matter more because then they have to explain to their public. It's like George W. Bush says, look, I commit to withdrawing by this date. And then I commit to helping the Iraqis. And then guess what? He doesn't do that. He has to explain to the war hawks in his country and to the peace doves. Why didn't you do that? You said you committed yourself to this. You didn't do it. But in order for that to happen, we have to have a framework for them to commit to, like the grain deal. Yeah.
Like the Minsk agreements.
Which Russia didn't follow.
Okay, but it was much easier and much better for Ukraine to have gone first and withdrawn their troops, for example, from the demilitarized zone.
We can have stuff like the Geneva Accords. They would have had control
of their entire border, as in the Minsk deal.
We can have stuff like the Geneva Accords, which Russia didn't follow. We can have stuff like the grain deal, which Russia didn't. We could do stuff like the Minsk agreements, which Russia didn't follow. Neither side completely
follows things. This is where you're one or zero.
We can just. So it seems like frameworks aren't actually a really good way of moderating the behavior of hegemons.
Guess what? The world is messy, but we have laws. You're like the guys that say, "Oh, if we ban guns, then only the criminals will have guns."
Well, I am pro-gun.
No, it's good to have the laws on the books. Okay.
Okay. So, what law should we have in the books right now?
It's not up to me. It's up to the negotiators to be empowered. They weren't even empowered.
Okay, what about say UN resolutions on illegal acquisition of territory?
You understand Ukraine assassinated one of its own representatives?
Oh my God! Oh, please, no, stop! I don't know if you saw a squirrel. We have to stick to this topic, okay?
No, but they assassinated their own representatives to send a message. Okay.
That's great. I love it when they do that.
That's not irrelevant to you.
I love it when they do that. Okay, so
yeah.
We already have UN accords on the illegal acquisition of territory. That's already a framework.
It's like if the CIA assassinated the representatives that were sent by Biden to make peace with Ukraine. Like, let's say the Iran deal was happening.
What does that have to do with what I'm saying?
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. I'm not. By the way, I don't want to say. It sounds like I'm blaming Ukrainians. I'm not. I am for Ukrainian civilians to go back to their kids and like start living lives, right?
Oh,
there's no reason to
under Russian rule
keep killing another 100,000 people for no fucking reason.
Under Russian rule?
No, not on. Russia's goal was not to take over Ukraine with 100,000 troops or 150,000 troops. It was okay. Let's talk about that because I think your premise is that Russia's trying to genocide all Ukraine or maybe
we don't have to get into that. Them invading is enough. I don't think they should be able to invade. I think it's good when invading countries get beaten back.
I agree with you. I agree it's good when invading countries get beaten back, but not at the expense of millions of people's lives.
Okay. So then you aren't okay with them being beaten back.
It's a matter of degree. How many Ukrainians have to die before you would change your mind?
What? No, it's like them. I don't decide for them when they surrender. Zelensky has the ability to surrender. You can check Zelensky's approval rating. Currently, with the fighting they're doing, despite all the dead Ukrainians, it seems like more than 90% of Ukrainians support Zelensky and therefore support Zelensky's current attitude towards the conflict.
Okay, so then take the polls in Russia and say that many support Russia's invasion of
that
Ukraine.
Would be, yeah, so the critical difference there is that Russia is the one invading Ukraine. So this is like the difference. The Jews don't want to be holocausted, but the Germans want to holocaust the Jews. So really, who can really say what the democratic...
The support of the Germans for the Nazi regime was monstrous, and the support of the Russians for their invasion is monstrous, and our support for the Iraq invasion is monstrous.
should be
Yes,
the ones
these
to
things can all be
decide.
true at the same time.
The Ukrainian people should be the ones to decide the extent to which they want to defend their territory, and they can do so through their support of
The
Zelensky.
Ukrainian people and the Russian people do not want to kill each other.
Then why are they enlisting to fight Russians?
Because the politicians are conscripting them.
Oh, I see. So there's no. So all the Ukrainian
sides.
soldiers are just like unwilling recruits.
Hello. Do you know there's a law since the February 22nd that men cannot leave the country?
I'm fully aware. I talked about it.
Okay, so both sides are forcing
So
people
why
to fight
do so many Ukrainians support Zelensky then?
because he's their president.
And so they didn't support Yanukovych. Yanukovych was the president.
Actually, many did. You just discount the entire Eastern
No.
Ukraine. They were disenfranchised. You've
Okay.
said nothing
Oh my
about
God.
that.
Wait. We can keep running around this for sure, but you're literally like empty.
You
Okay. You
literally
don't actually
think that
believe
Ukraine is a
anything.
democracy by
No,
disenfranchising
you
millions
don't
of
believe
people from
anything.
voting.
Okay, listen. How long should a country fight to defend itself? Well, that should probably... So if the country's in the right to defend itself, that is to say, it defending itself, it's not like Germany defending itself in like 1944 or whatever. It's defending itself like legitimately against an unjust invader. Then the people should decide the extent to which they want to do that. And one of the ways that they can do that is by supporting their head of state, who is currently dictating the war process. So by
That's the
supporting
same
Zelensky,
framework that you've always used, and it will always lead to the same results. Millions of people suffering. Sure.
except
Yeah.
the country that's invading is the anti-democratic autocracy. So if anything, my system is the one that's the victim of your
Okay,
system.
so let me just ask you, in your system, right? When there was the British Raj, okay, yes, they had a king, but they had a parliamentary democracy, not whatever. But they had the British East India country, which turned into the British Raj. Millions dead. The Bengal famine, which happened after the Holodomor, terrible things, including in their own backyard with the Irish, also the Irish potato famine, whatever. It's terrible stuff. So they come to India, and what got them out was Gandhi's peaceful, non-violent resistance. India's free now of the British.
Wait,
What
do
I'm
you
telling
do you seriously think that you realize that Gandhi worked alongside the violent revolutionaries and even admitted that he
Yeah.
would not have been able to oust Britain if it weren't for their help, right?
But also, we didn't supply
But
weapons.
also,
No. Yes. Also,
we shouldn't
yes.
have. Wait, you wouldn't have supported supplying weapons to
No.
the Indian resistance, who were victims of millions dead from British occupation? You would have just been like, let him decide between the two groups. You
I
on
will
one
say
side
this.
you have the imperialist genocidal occupiers.
No. I want to be super clear. If there is a way to avoid anyone being killed to any great extent, and it would lead to, say, 5 years of domination by this country, but then the government changes and they renegotiate, versus, let's say a country comes in and starts killing people and you imminently need to stop a genocide, then yes, I would support going in there and stopping an imminent genocide. But if there's a way to not even have a genocide, and the worst thing that will happen
And
is
this could have happened
some
with Ukraine
flag will
surrendering
be
to
slightly
Russia?
changed somewhere, yes, I would totally not give weapons to change that.
So
yeah.
should Ukraine have just surrendered to Russia from the get-go because it would have been morally wrong for them to defend themselves? Because
Ukraine should have probably, and I'm saying this as someone who doesn't know all the details, but most likely gone first in withdrawing to the demilitarized zone in the Minsk agreements, going first.
there is no demilitarized.
risking,
Wait.
having the legitimacy.
Wait. First of all, when the Minsk Accords were still in effect, or at least attempted to be in effect, they already were in the right place. The Russians were the ones in the Donbass region. That's one. And for two, Russia opened this war with an attack on Kiev. This wasn't just about the Donbass.
You keep conflating. When you said the last part, this war, you meant 2022, right?
Yes.
Attack on Kiev. Okay. Which one do I aim at first? Let's take the attack on Kiev.
No,
Okay.
so we can't do this forever.
You just say things and don't let me respond.
I do. I love
Okay,
saying
cool.
things. We can't do this forever.
You say two things. I don't know which one to start with. What do you want me to start with?
Both.
talked
You
about
said
a war-
no. This is the problem. You said two things. You talked about the Minsk agreements, and you talked about retreating past the territorial line. I'm indicating that that wasn't relevant in any instance of this conflict.
I'm saying, you asked me a question. What should Ukraine have surrendered? My point was, at any point prior to 2021, in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, Normandy format, Britain and France and Germany trying and Belarus trying to get them together. If Ukraine unilaterally withdrew and said, we're not going to fire a single bullet, we're going to try to get these right-wing militias to stop fighting, which, by the way, it was very hard to do because
What
these guys
time period was
were
this
pissed.
again?
Huh?
What are we talking about now or 2014?
We're talking about 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Any one of those years. If Ukraine took the initiative in demilitarizing, so to speak, right? And allowing these regions to have elections and enfranchising them back into Ukraine, then if Russia didn't do anything and just kept, dominating, it would have to explain to its public why it's a complete asshole. And what I'm trying to tell you is that's the point that I want to get them to, is that there is no defense to their own public of their actions. Currently there is, clearly, because their public is on that side with their media. What I'm trying to say is if Ukraine unilaterally, just, like Gandhi, okay, here you go. Within a month, they would have control of the whole thing.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to
I think that's profoundly dumb and naive. I don't know.
Why?
Because
Why?
that's
I want
literally
to dig into why you think that's profoundly dumb.
for every
rather than you
imaginable
just
reason,
that.
beginning with the laws of thermodynamics and ending with every book I've ever read. This is outside of reality. This is fantasy. We're talking about the Little Red Riding Hood here. No, Russia invaded. This is never how conflicts play out. Russia
I'll explain
invaded.
to you that it was.
No, it's not.
I'll
No,
give you
it's not.
examples.
It's not.
It
Russia
has played out that way.
invaded. They invaded.
played
They
out that
wanted
way with
land.
Russia.
They wanted power. That's what countries do when they invade. That is the thing that they like.
That's not the only thing they want.
Those are the
You're
main
acting
things
like
they
they're
want, yes.
one-dimensional actors.
No, that is the main thing that they want. If you go back to Rome
Okay,
or
let's
the
say it's the main thing that they
Crusades,
want. Do you understand that 11 million
Okay,
Russians
what
have families in Ukraine, right? Do
Okay,
you understand
they
don't wanna
were
kill
they were fine before 2014 when
Agreed.
Russia invaded and
Agreed, they're
and
assholes.
turned the Donbass, which was the area of Ukraine with the most ethnically Russian people, into a fucking war zone. Russia doesn't
Agreed.
care about Russian ethnic people.
That's what I blame them for the most. I said, out of everything, including Bucha, I blame them for arming the separatists and to bringing those guys like Gherkin or whatever, same as we did with Panama and Noriega, and train them and sent them in
Yes,
there.
America bad.
That is really malicious. Yes, I agree.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean there isn't a pathway. Here's my point. There's got to be a
listen,
pathway out of the
God
woods.
willing, may one day the greatest diplomats of the world be blessed with your knowledge. With respect, like, this is, look, I don't do this shit, okay? This would be like me coming on here and being like, you know how you could end the war in Ukraine? Really sick military tactics. As somebody who's played a lot of CSGO, okay? I'm going to show you guys what Ukraine could do to bring this to an end real quick. Like, that's what you're doing, but from the diplomacy perspective.
Except it's not just
everyone,
me
you're,
saying
no,
it.
you're an idea. No, it's geniuses like Elon. Yes. It's ideas, guys. People,
if
no,
you
no, no,
give
no,
me-
no. It's people
Oh,
who
no.
have spent their
15
entire
seconds,
lives.
I'll tell you a list of who's who.
It's
who's
tech
saying it.
guys. It's people who have had their whole lives
No,
having
it's
their
not tech
egos
guys.
inflated.
Noam Chomsky is not a tech guy. The
Noam
Pope is not a-
Chomsky's suggestion was that Ukraine just surrender and let themselves be raped by Russia. At
Nope.
least he's honest
Nope.
enough to
I
recognize that's
interviewed
what
him
would happen.
myself, unlike you. I've
That's
asked
what
him directly
that
this
is what would
question.
happen. At least he's honest enough to admit it. Like, at least
No,
Noam
he's
Chomsky
not. He
was
doesn't
just like,
admit it, and he says
no, he
has
does,
no-
and he's correct in saying, yeah, like, yes,
He
they should
doesn't.
just surrender. Yeah.
Go look at my video. Go look at my video where I point blank ask him, and he says, "I don't tell what Ukraine what to do. I am telling our country to stop getting in the way of a peace agreement and to just
Right,
as
which
you're
is
giving
which
them
a
weapons,
profoundly
how
retarded
about you have a
sentiment. Yes.
parallel- Are you even listening? Okay, whatever.
There's no
Go ahead.
reason to listen to anything Noam Chomsky says on this subject. He's embarrassing, and he should probably have stopped talking
You're
about it. the moment-
misunderstanding him. Okay.
No, I promise you, I understand him far better than you.
Why would I believe your promise when I have talked to him and asked him this directly?
Because
directly?
I'm asking you to be half as trusting with me as you are with Russians when it comes to diplomacy. That's all I'm asking. Okay.
I'm not trusting Russians or any imperialist country.
Hey, what are we supposed to do when Russia doesn't
letting
follow
them-
the provisions of the
I'm
peace
letting
agreement?
them sign an agreement, a contract that they are then publicly committing themselves to their public.
Okay,
in
and
front
what
of their
if
own
they
public.
just? Oh, dude, again, this is what I mean by like overconfident ideas guy who spent their entire lives being told they're special by people above them. Okay, wow, Russia should sign a piece of paper saying they're gonna do a good thing, and that
It's
way they'll
not
be
a
held
piece
to
of
it.
paper,
Dude,
that's how-
the United States is more of a democracy than Russia is, and we break agreements
What
all
was
the
the
fucking
Iran
time.
deal? How about, okay, so according to you,
We
why
just
have
broke
an
it.
Iran
What
deal?
happened after we broke the Iran deal? Nothing.
Why have it? Why have a deal? Why have a deal?
That's
Why
a
have
great
laws?
question. Why have
Murderers
a
are
deal?
gonna look. Rapists are gonna rape. Why have laws? Why have laws?
So,
What
but
would
I'm
you do?
asking you, what happens
Yeah.
if they don't abide by it?
What happens when a rapist doesn't abide by rape laws?
You arrest them.
And what if you can't?
Well, then you keep trying, and if you can't, that's bad. So
Oh,
what
you
happens?
can't find them. Okay, they're not strong. They're just elusive.
Yes, and
Go
rape is
ahead.
unfortunately
So why
quite
have
common.
laws?
So what?
Your whole logic is like,
what happens when
Yeah.
Russia doesn't follow the agreement?
what happens when a rapist can't be
Can
found?
you
or
just
a murderer?
answer? I just answered. We just did the rapist thing that you want to talk about, and I
Okay,
answered
so the
it.
answer is it's still worth it to have them commit to as
Okay,
much as
so
possible.
what happens after that? So it was worth it. We did the agreement. It didn't work out.
We didn't though. How about we try?
No, I'm okay.
better
Wait,
to
hold
try
on. Wait,
and fail.
I'm holding the power button on the back of your head for 2 seconds so you reset. Okay, just shh. It's okay. Okay.
Ah,
We have followed your example, and we have done the paper, and we wrote on it, and now Russia isn't abiding by that agreement. What do we do now?
then we can go back to doing what we're doing now.
War.
War.
Okay. Well, then why the fuck is Russia not willing to meet to discuss diplomacy without any preconditions?
Actually, after they took those regions, they're kind of open to diplomacy at this point. It's the Ukrainians that say until Putin is reelected or another guy comes in, we are not talking to that war criminal. And I can understand them.
Isn't even talking about ceding the territory.
That's preconditions for meeting is what you said. Now you're
Yeah,
shifting
Russia's
goalposts.
precondition is that they keep the territory.
No, there's no preconditions for talking.
That is the precondition they have for diplomacy. They are uninterested in ceding the territory.
So then I blame Russia as well. Is that what you want to hear? Blame? Yeah,
Well,
what I'm talking about.
when you've decided who's at fault, you can then go on to decide what can be done to address the problem. So yes, assigning blame is really important when you want to figure out what to do next.
Yes, assigning blame is important, but it sometimes is not the most important thing, and that's what children don't understand, but adults do.
Well, I agree. The most important thing is continuing to give Ukraine weapons.
Fine. At this point, you may be right, and I hope you're right. I hope that Russia simply gives up, doesn't have those 300,000 people they conscripted enter a winter war. I hope so. I want the Ukrainian people to oust the Russians, but what's your plan B? You asked me about a plan B on a fantasy scenario. This is a realistic scenario. Russians didn't do all this for nothing. What's your plan B if Russia starts conscripting more people? Oh, just keep doing what we're doing, right?
Yeah, it's not like it costs us anything. What, a couple $2 billion to give Ukraine the ability to defend itself against our #2 geopolitical
Oh my
threat?
goodness. Dude, I'm sorry, but that's so callous. Like us, it's like when we destroy Libya and we talk about 4 Americans.
Damn. Well,
We talk
that's
about
crazy.
Khashoggi.
Well, you know, Russia could always leave, and then they wouldn't keep getting blown up by our
no,
missiles.
it's literally no, dude. Like now, I get to say this to you, okay? How about you turn off your heat for the whole winter, at least, at the very least, and at the most, why don't you go to a war zone and live how they are supposed? You're volunteering their lives for your geopolitical.
No, the Ukrainians are
thing.
volunteering their lives. They're called volunteers.
Not all of them. Not the conscripted men.
They're
who
not
have
currently
to,
doing conscription.
This is the thing. This is why libertarians have the skepticism, right? You've got this thing where, well, they voted for it. Hamas voted for, Gaza voted for Hamas. Like, no, the people, it's much more nuanced
What are you
than
talking
that.
about? What?
Okay, so your
They
logic,
can listen. Listen,
that of a
if
nationalist.
Russians don't want to get blown up by our missiles, then they can simply leave Ukraine. It's not
I
their
hope
home.
you don't. I hope you don't get offended by what I'm saying now. And I understand you're coming from a good place. You want territorial integrity of Ukraine to be restored. What
I
I'm
care
saying is
about the
people-
will of the Ukrainian people to not be invaded and conquered by a fascist neighbor.
Good. But the way you're going about it
By
is what
defending yourself
extreme-
in a conventional
is exactly
war.
what extreme what you're saying. The things you say. Well, it's not us being killed; it's them. And look,
That is how it works, yes.
And when you say that, wait, did you disagree with that? It's not us getting killed; it's them.
Yeah,
right?
that is true. Yes, it is not me getting killed in the Ukraine-Russia war between Ukraine and Russia because I'm an American.
So that's a special case of the problem, because the politicians can always say it's not me getting killed.
No,
it's
again,
the peons that
the politicians in America aren't prolonging the war. We're just giving the
try
good
to
guys
focus.
weapons.
Politicians everywhere, including in Ukraine, and Ukrainian politicians like Arestovich, advisor to Zelensky, they have said in 2019, we want to have a big war because then we get into NATO. And yes, millions of people will die, or not millions, but like they understand people will die, but not them.
Oh,
not
sorry.
their
Wait, are
family.
you quoting them or not? Because the way you just corrected yourself made me think you were making part of that quote up.
Okay, go and look up Arestovich prediction 2019.
I don't care about what some guy said in 2019. All I care is that the people of Ukraine right now want to defend themselves against an invasion from a fascist neighbor, and I want to support that.
I get that, and it's slightly better than saying Gazans elected Hamas.
It is. There's no relationship
the will of the
between
people
these two things.
to have Hamas. Look, the will of the people is this thing that people say. There's 20%
There's literally no relationship between these things that are being said here. There's none. There's no connection. It's a non sequitur.
I think that is the difference between a statist and a libertarian, because the statist has the consent of the governed. Well, we voted for this policy, so therefore we could have 100,000 people die now.
Whereas the principled libertarian surrenders and allows themselves to be conquered by the fascist country. Yes.
So when Duterte kills a bunch of drug dealers and innocent people...
What is this new example?
No, it's just an example of your principle, which is if people vote for a guy and he winds up with a policy that kills a lot of people, well, they voted for it, so they must support the killing of these people.
We're not talking about killing a bunch of people. We're talking about defending yourselves against an invasion, in which case, yes, I do think it's okay.
I guarantee you that if all they were doing was defending themselves against an invasion and not simultaneously attacking the Donbass cities that they've been doing for years, then a lot more people would look at that and be like,
Russia was the one who attacked the Donbass when they invaded the Donbass. That was kind of on them as well.
So you're like those libertarians in NAP, which says it's defensive use of force. It's always defensive, according to the.
Well, I do believe in the right to self-defense. That is the thing I believe in. Yeah.
Okay, so just like the libertarians believe in defending your property, you believe in defending your national territory.
Yeah, if people in a nation are being invaded and conquered by fascists, then I am okay with them preserving their national sovereignty by defending themselves.
It's ironic because your standard for fascists would include most Ukrainians, apparently.
Well, we're talking about the state. See, you tend to conflate people and governments, but I don't.
I don't think like you.
No,
I don't think
you do. That's your. See, as a libertarian, I recognize that the Russian people are not their government. The Russian government is autocratic. The Ukrainian government is democratic. So yes.
No.
No.
If it was democratic, they wouldn't have a revolution every decade.
Nothing less democratic than the literal manifested will of the people.
We would have to disagree on that. Democracy is there's a framework for voting. You have to trust the elections. You have to have a good
libertarian.
What is democracy if not voting? What is decision making?
Collectively? You were lambasting collective decision making earlier. You're so politically incoherent. I said,
what are you talking?
I literally said you can say that Zelensky's support for the war is popular with Ukrainians because he has like 91% approval, and you were like, is that how you determine the will of the people? And now you're unironically like, listen, liberal, elections are the only way.
Your own rules. I'm saying it's not the best system, but at least by your own rules, you shouldn't call it a democracy when they have a revolution and topple their government.
First of all, it wasn't a revolution. It was a protest that led to a coward fleeing. It's objectively not a revolution. The government was not effective.
You literally go on Wikipedia, it's called the Revolution of Dignity. It is literally a revolution.
They can call it whatever they want, man. It was a protest. A revolution replaces the government.
That's how they start.
They didn't even appoint a new leader.
Start with a protest by students. How did Tiananmen Square? It was squashed.
They didn't even appoint a new leader. They didn't attack the existing one. They didn't change the framework of government or demand a new constitution.
Arab Spring totally changed like almost every country that had
an Arab Spring. I cough on Biden and he like flees the country in fear, is that like a revolution because he like panicked and left?
If January 6th they ousted Biden, that would have been a revolution. Yes.
Except January 6th was an attack prompted by a political candidate to kill existing members of the existing existing government.
Really. To kill. He openly called for their deaths.
Out of curiosity, is there any like retarded positions you don't believe in? Are you an astrology guy? Are you like what else can we get through?
Just to summarize your
no. Just let's really get to the depth of it. What things do you not? So you're a crypto guy.
It's good for our weapons industry. That's what Trump said. It's big jobs business to give the Saudis weapons.
I feel like we've pretty much exhausted this here, man. The issue here is that, like, no matter what happens in the real world, you're going to sit, like, in your padded cell, convincing yourself that if only more frameworks had been built, if only people could respect your genius, like, none of this would have happened.
No, it's
But
not
nothing
about
I say
my
will change your
genius.
mind.
It's literally the other way. Can I just say this one thing? You're the armchair general saying that if we give Ukraine more weapons, they're going to win. And because you believe in that, you're literally saying, well, if another 100,000 people die, it ain't me and my family. I bet you that if it was you and your family and it was your city that's being attacked, you might talk a little differently.
Yes, I would love if it was my city being invaded by a fascist government. I would absolutely be on the front lines saying, we should surrender. We shouldn't fight back. Yeah, that's in line with my ideology.
I mean, I could be wrong, but if a city 1,000 miles away from you was being attacked, I bet you wouldn't go there with your family and sit there under bombs.
That's just position debunked. I am not currently a part of the foreign legionaries. It is true. I do play video games from my studio. What of it?
I'm saying that if Mexico decided to take back Texas, or the 1/3 of the United States, which was previously Mexico but illegally annexed in a war or whatever by the United States, I guess legally because back then there were no laws, and you seem to say laws are irrelevant and UN is irrelevant, then fine. Well, that's Mexican territory. So if Mexico decided to take back Texas, are you saying that you would want the territorial integrity of the United States, you would sacrifice your family for that? I wouldn't.
Wait, do you think Ukraine defending itself against fascist invaders is the same as Mexico?
I would say the United States invading itself against an invasion from Mexico is not warrant me, a libertarian in New York, to go travel to Texas to fight.
Do you even understand my? I feel like I'm arguing with you, and you're like, okay, well, if your positions are correct, then how is exactly that you can see the moon during the daytime? And then you point up at the sky during the daytime, and you're like, see, it's right up there. How can you possibly make these claims? I have no idea how to debunk what you're saying because I don't even know what we're talking about right now. I have no idea what you think a defeater from my argument is. You can see the moon
in the daytime sometimes. What are you even talking about?
That's a good question. You know what? Let's find an answer. Let's find an answer to this question.
I do hope. See, this is an example of why things don't get resolved. If I listened to you for 3 minutes without interrupting, and then you listened to me and made an effort to try to, in good faith, understand my arguments, guess what? We would come to an agreement, and I believe so would Putin and Biden, Putin and Poroshenko. They don't care, and they don't care because they don't have the incentives.
If only the world leaders and the most powerful governments on earth had considered that talking to their opposition might be good. Sadly, your genius may yet not be recognized in our time.
Well, I'm sorry that you had to end it on a snark, but I think we agree on that.
No, we don't, because they've tried. Because Russia is full of bastards. Because they're a fascist government, and they lie, and they cheat, and they steal from their people and from others. And you shouldn't trust any goddamn thing that comes out of the Kremlin. The only real diplomacy you can have with the Russian government as it currently stands is the one that gets splattered across the hillsides of Ukraine after U.S. missiles make contact. And if that's ever going to change, it'll be when Putin's out of office. And I'm not going to sacrifice the entirety of fucking Ukraine to the diplomatic wills of a country that lied 87 times a minute on its way to this invasion.
Can you give me like 60 seconds to just say the last thing I want to say?
Sure, but it won't be as cool as the thing I said. My thing was cool.
The socialist revolution, the Internationale, was about workers of the world unite. Okay? Nationalists, I'm sorry, but you speak like a nationalist. This nation is bad. It can't be trusted. Those leaders, they can't be trusted, but we could be trusted. Or maybe we can't be trusted, but we certainly can't have any deals or any laws or anything. People had no laws. People didn't have the UN, and the United States took Mexico's territory in a war, just like that. And my point is that this happens all over the place. Proxy wars happen all over the place. Having agreements, having politicians like Bernie Sanders perhaps or others willing to go to Russia and actually listen to the other people, even when they were the USSR, and have sister cities. These are the kinds of people we need, and we need them in Ukraine, and then the war would have never happened. We need them in Russia. We need them in the United States.
We need them in Russia.
You're carrying water for politicians that don't do their job and don't get killed.
In this respect,
don't ride into battle.
Ukraine and NATO countries,
everyone else gets killed for them, for their failures.
For Russia's invasion. In this instance,
and you blame.
Every country involved but Russia did what they were supposed to.
I want people to not die, and for that, I would like to have frameworks and contracts drawn up, international new treaties.
Foreign legionnaire, are you willing to go over to Russia? Are you willing to go to the Kremlin and argue your case?
I would, if you go join the Legion and fight in
If I go
Ukraine.
to Ukraine and join the Foreign Legionnaires, you'll go to Russia, to the Kremlin, and you'll argue like, hey, what if we tried diplomacy instead of the invasion?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I'll consider it.
All right, me too.
Right. I love you.
All right, man, this was cool. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Fuck me, dead. Well, if only we'd established more frameworks beforehand. Whew. Oh, right. Oh, sure. Whew. Okay. I want you all to know. Okay, people are like, oh, you know, I could do Vaush's job. 99% of the time, you're right. Okay. However, sometimes, this job demands much of me. I want you all to know that. Is that guy just a fash? No, I think he's a tech bro. I think that there's a lot of people like this. I don't think he's malicious. I really don't. Maybe some people disagree. I think for a lot of people, it's like they see a lot of people don't like the idea of recognizing that the world is complicated and also sometimes like sort of dumb and outside their control. And it's like, well, why haven't they tried X or why haven't they tried Y? One of the big things that you can do when growing up, like one of the big like hallmarks of maturity, is like looking at something that doesn't quite make sense to you and thinking, there's a reason for this. I might not get it, and it might not be a great reason, but not only are there reasons for this, people have dedicated their lives to those reasons and like died over them. Like any minor thing, you know? But some people, I guess that like, so it's like some people don't want to buy that. So it's like, oh yeah, well actually, you know, if only they were diplomatic. Elon Musk does this, right? Like Elon Musk, remember? He there were those like Thai kids trapped in a cave, and he wanted to be a hero to save them. So he was like, what if we do this totally impractical thing that won't work? And then he got rebuked, and some other guy showed him up, and then Elon called that guy a pedophile based on info from a PI that he hired that got fake info. He hired a guy to defame this hero so that he could like steal the spotlight or some insane shit like that. Like, you know, but that's like, yeah, it's like that's, you know. You really need to stop accepting debates like that. Nah, I thought that was fun. You perform well. I think you could have benefited from more frameworks. Yeah, true. Is this what a technocrat is? No, a technocrat is a person who believes decisions should be made by experts, like field experts, you know, not a democracy. Everyone's at least a little bit technocratic, you know. We probably want the CDC being run by like healthcare professionals and not like game show hosts, you know. You had WhatsApp pings? That wasn't me, that was him. Yeah. I don't want to debate Chomsky. He's too old. It would just make me feel sad. I'm not joking when I say that. That's not me being like lazy or whatever. Like legit, it would just like dampen my spirits significantly for this like hero. It'd be boring because he talks really slow, and there couldn't be any like blood sports, even though the stuff he says is really dumb. And like, if I challenged him on something, he would take 8 million years to answer. And I don't want to. I don't want to. It would make me very unhappy. It's a clout thing that I could get. I've had the opportunity to do it before. I just don't. Yeah. Yeah. Would I call Chomsky a retard? I promise you that if for any reason I did talk to Chomsky, I promise you all that I would be consistent. And I would, if necessary, call him retarded. I promise you. I would not give up on my held values. Let me just complete this level. We're almost there. Nice. Oh, for anyone who's been watching this and has been wondering, this game is called Dead Cells. It's basically like the 2D platforming, like action-focused roguelike. It's really, really, really good. It's super good. It was made by a worker cooperative, who worked really hard to make it, and it's gotten like 58 million expansions over the past 4 years, and it's basically the most. They just keep putting stuff into it. Excuse me. Tequila Sunset, I know what you mean. Inca Blue, I know. It's also got references to, like, every other fucking game in the world. Yeah, you're all very clever with your goddamn memory and object permanence. Oh, God, it's so warm in here. Fucking... Gotta turn the AC on. Well, I hope you all enjoy the debate. Sorry. It's a very fun game. Insane amount of content. It was insufferable. Yeah. Whoa! Ah, whatever. We're at the end. Hey, where's the fucking door? Oh, god damn it. Oh, god damn it. It was the invulnerability one. There we go. What was that guy's name you just talked to? I've got a really bad memory. Don't ask me that. It makes me seem really ungracious. Yeah, I did get some Mr. Girl vibes from that convo, just with the whole, like, well, my solution be talking. But the difference is, I think the guy that I just talked to is fully sincere, and I think that Mr. Girl just says any shit that will get him notoriety, because it's, like, a way for him to, manufacture clout, you know? I remember the one time, somebody linked it in chat, there was a clip where Mr. Girl was in a call, and the person was like, oh, yeah, well, you know, you only believe this because, you know, the whole, like, you're a pedo thing has lost its flavor, and you're looking for the next, like, fake controversial thing to give you attention. And Mr. Girl just kind of sat there stunned for a second, which was pretty funny. Sorry, let me just put my points in, and then we'll, Sadist Stiletto. Sure. Yeah, read his ass. Was this the guy you were talking to, who you talked to in June 2021? Yeah. I think so. Yeah, same guy, yeah. What was this call about? What was the first convo about? I forget. Dude, holy shit. I can't believe how much nicer my setup is, and how much hotter I am now. Oh my god. Yeah. Dope. Okay, get me out of this. Let me fucking do the thing. That was a year ago? Year and a half, I think. Ice shards? Sure, ice shards. Fucking... 55 cells left. 55. Lightning bolt? Ice shield? Sure. Have you noticed any issues with the controls? No, not at all. Okay. Woo! Look at all that crap. Okay. Get it out. Get it out. Alright, there we go.